VOD viewers, do not skip ahead. I'm going to jump right into this one. Remember neurotyping like 5 years ago? I had this whole thing where I was like, I think people think in different ways. Ha 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 ha. Turns out people don't think in very similar ways, actually, like at all. And I really opened up a lot of doors for myself in understanding other people and my place inside of the world with neurotyping. It basically started my transition because of the fact that when I created the chart, I put myself more in the category of being a like logic driven thinker. And on reflection, it became clear that I am not naturally a more logic driven thinker, that I had been like putting extra effort into doing that because I felt insecure about that particular thing, about like not being as logical as I thought I should be. And therefore, I had poured a lot into that. But that ultimately, I'm really much more of an emotional thinker. And when I realized that, and that was why I connected with the people I connect with, that they are people who are in a similar position of being emotional thinkers who are trying to be more logical so they can understand the world that they're stuck in, you know? Um, when I realized, you know, sort of what is the difference between the kinds of people that I could get along with and that I couldn't. And it's not about being a logical thinker or emotional thinker, but rather how closed off you are towards understanding yourself as an emotional being. You know, that like you could be somebody who is like a very logical person, but you are still in touch with who you are emotionally. You know, I at the time was not in touch with who I was emotionally. I was again like focusing all on my own rational characteristics and pretty much just ignoring whatever I was feeling, you know, for a very long time. So um you know, it came to be that like rationale was a prison of the mind, because ultimately you can't really rationalize like there's we don't like human science has not figured out enough to fully rationalize a lot of things, you know. So like there are certain categories where you can learn all of the rationale that we have, and it doesn't mean that you like understand. It doesn't give you a, oh, now I get it, you know. And when it comes to being transgender, that was something that had been an obsession in the back of my mind since childhood, like since before even puberty. That like I was always feminine and always into feminine things, but rejecting the notion of femininity because I saw it as opposite to myself by nature. I was thinking of everything in this binary way that, like, okay, I'm a boy, so I have to like boy things, but I didn't, you know? So it was like I was in this weird middle ground, only satisfiable by Pokemon. And, you know, as I grew up, I developed this fascination towards gender um, representations and like just kind of studying them and figuring out why, like why do women act in these ways, why do men act in these ways. And the answer is usually more social than intuitive, you know, or it is the intuition of trying to be social. Like your attempt to fit into a social environment categorically drives you towards participating in things that reflect yourself, and then you kind of become more and more stereotypical almost on purpose, you know. But not everybody does that, and so or people, you know, gravitate towards new stereotypes or different categories of stereotypes that emerge. But like when you start noticing that there's more to it than just like act like a boy or act like a girl, that's when the whole um logic of it starts to be really hard to follow, of like, well, why do you act differently than other girls but not differently from all other girls? Like what's driving these categorizations? And you can study this stuff on a sociological level, but you will never get down to this is why. You just won't. I don't know why I'm trans. There's not enough rationale. Like we don't know enough about why anybody is trans. I don't know enough about my own, there's just no way there's not like a way you can scan the brain and go, oh, that's the trans part, like, that cluster there, that's the trans. Yeah, if your brain's shaped like that, it's trans, we just don't know what's causing it. We only know that it's there. So, in light of that, not ignoring my emotions because I cannot rationalize them, just understanding that there must be a rationale I don't understand. I can recognize my emotions and just be like, okay, they are what they are. And I think most people do that all the time. Most people don't think that everything must be rational, or at the very least that they are supposed to rationalize everything before they can engage with it. That's my particular hang up that came from running away from confronting my feelings. So that's what started my transition, and all of that happened because I came up with this neurotyping chart. Now, the way that neurotyping proposed that different people think is that you either think in terms of logic or in terms of impression, essentially. Well, the word I used was lexical and impressionistic. And lexical basically means putting things into specific categories, and impressionistic means that like things can be alike even if they're not in the same category. I guess it's just like a very different way of looking at categories. Honestly, the problem with me trying to redescribe it now is that I don't think it's effective. I don't think neurotyping I don't think it's a good system, because I think that actually thinking happens in way more different ways than I had realized at the time. I was thinking there are people who are sort of more logical versus emotional, and then I also thought there were people who have more like sort of chaotic lateral thinking versus people with more straightforward linear thinking. And those are four vectors that you can measure, and sure, I don't know if they have anything really to do with one another. They all belong on the same chart, but it's just so much more complicated than that. And the more people I talk to, the more I realize that like thought just doesn't operate in any. It doesn't operate in a way that is describable. You cannot describe how you think. You can describe some of your thoughts, because sometimes you picture something in your mind, and maybe you can verbally describe what that picture was approximately, or maybe you can draw it approximately, or create it in some other fashion. And sometimes you have words in your mind and you can say them or approximate them. They might not come out sounding the way they did in your head. You might hear music in your brain and have no idea how to recreate that in real life, like I do all the time. So, like, your thoughts can come in all these different forms and structures, and a lot of them are just beyond description. Like, how do I even? And when I've interviewed lots of people about the way they think in the time since making the neurotyping chart, and I've had people, when I ask them like, "Do you think in words?" They're like confused. What do you mean, think in words? I'm like, like narration, like in your head. They're like, I mean, I have thoughts, and I'm like, well, okay, are the thoughts words? you know but at the same time, this thing I'm about to describe kind of just sprung into my brain in such a way where I probably only knew 10 or so of the exact words that I was going to say in describing this, but I felt like I understood the whole idea. You know, in a way that like I just have to keep saying more words and fleshing out this idea, and eventually it'll make as much sense to you as it does to me. But the words are all like they're like the whole idea is there before the words are there, if that makes sense. Serial Experiments Domino with 4.99 said, I'm working on a little tricksy animation to solve my stress. Wish I could give more, but here's what I got. Trans gotta support trans. Hell yeah. Heal that broken heart. Beautiful. Solve my stress is like raunchiest sex jam. Right? That's the one I think it is, right? Right, I beat like a big dick, petite chick, bulging at the belly when my butt split, cup tits grip tightly when my butt rips. I don't remember. My brother tells me I need to promote that album more because he says it's a masterpiece. Do I agree? I don't know. Abstract thought is prior to language, so translation to language is a lossy process. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Personality basins, lossy compressions. This is all assuming like logical thinking can't be emotional. Yeah, I mean, those weren't the words I used in the original video, but it kind of is. It was kind of like I was trying to work around using those words almost, with lexic, like, because the way I described lexical was like I was saying logical. I don't know. I just thought that at the time, I really thought that words were. I think I just had a different conception of what words are than what they are. Like what no thank you is saying here, that abstract thought is prior to language, so a translation to language is a lossy process. Like I don't think I had recognized that the thought before the language is the same. It like is more pure in a way than when the language is applied to it. I think I thought of it as like two different things happening. Like language is happening and impressions are happening, and they're in different parts of the brain, so to speak. But it's really more like it's all happening, and then it gets translated, and that's like just one process that happens, and it can happen inside or it can happen outside, but it's just one thing. It's not like a major part of the whole thinking process necessarily. It's just one result, one filter that it can go through. So in light of all this, I've been trying to figure out what is the evolution of neurotyping. And at first I thought it would be just like another axis on a cute graph. But the thing is, again, the more I talk to people, the more I've seen the world. Since it's been 5 years since neurotyping. In that time, I've been around the country like 10 times. I've been to almost every major American city outside of the Northeast. I haven't really been up there yet, but I plan to go hopefully this summer. I've met people all over the place. I've talked to different people, and I've interviewed lots of people about the way they think, trying to understand the neurotyping better. And my conclusion is every single fucking person thinks completely uniquely. That every single person just has a totally different thing going on. And there are similarities, obviously, because we can group people together by stereotypes. But when you actually interrogate any two people, they're just not thinking that similarly. It doesn't matter if they're like, except for like identical twins. Those are the only people who are thinking very similarly, and they can tell you every single difference between them. And all those differences are super meaningful to them because everything else is exactly the same. So every difference stands out extremely harshly, Whereas between like me and my brother, like it's a lot easier to notice everything that's similar and be like, oh wow, I can't believe how similar we are because so much is different. It feels alarming that there is so much similarity because there is also so much difference. Whereas if we were like literal, not even fraternal, Bird is a fraternal twin. Him and his twin are totally fucking different. Not like there are similarities, but it's not any more extreme than me and my brother Victor. Like they are about as similar as me and Vic are, even being literal fraternal twins, but not identical. So I don't think any two people thinks similarly enough. that we should even bother trying to put it all into one cute graph, one visual, right? But here's what we can do. We can apply like a list of vectors to people. I've been holding on to this notebook this whole time. This has just been in my hand, just off screen. I have to mirror my camera or else you cannot fucking read this. Let me do that real quick. This is my... I mean, I could probably keep expanding this list, but I'm also hoping we're going to reduce it a bit. Because I think the list is... too long. Because some of these words might mean the same things, but I haven't decided which one's the better word. But basically, these are a bunch of vectors of ways that people are. It's not so much ways that people think as ways that people be. And I think that rather than looking at these as like positive and negative, it's just kind of, it is what it is, because all of us are good in some of these ways and bad in some of these ways, or rather, you know, could improve in certain areas but excel in others, you know. Thank you, Nisa, for complimenting my hair. I brushed it. Which I don't always do before I go live because it can be a pain in the ass. All right, so this is like a long list of adjectives that a lot of them mean similar things, but not the same. And so where this started was me trying to think of 6 different vectors of intelligence. Like if we're going to describe someone as intelligent, because when you just look up like the definition of intellect, it's not very good. It doesn't tell you much. It's not very clear about what is intellect. Like, what does it mean to be smart? We have a real hard time defining what it is to be smart. These are all ways you can be smart. Every single one of these is a completely different way that you can be smart or dumb. None of these is the word smart or dumb. Every single one of these words is a different type of smart or dumb. And you are some combination of these. You are some combination of smarts and dumbs. Some of these are more overarching. Some of them are more specific. Again, I think this list can be reduced. I think we can figure out if some of these mean the same thing together. So, you recommend looking into Wittgenstein, a philosopher that talks about words and their social utility. I think that words are by nature, and I've said this a billion times, and I'm going to say it a billion more times, because romance is finding a billion ways to say the same thing. I believe that words are by nature authoritarian and therefore evil. The most natural, most pleasant existence you could have is to just be quiet. You know, humans didn't have words for most of our existence. We invented them because we wanted to get more complex things out of one another, make more complicated deals, you know. Little people like me wanted better shots at survival, so we came up with complicated systems of describing why we deserve to live. This is what I do. I go, hey, everybody, I deserve to be compensated for my life because look at what I can do. I can come up with so many good words to help you like yourself more or hate yourself more, whatever you need. I got you. I got the words. Look at how many fucking words I got. This is so many words. Okay. Every time I look at it, I'm just like, this is so many fucking words. So I want to start with something that somewhere that I am dumb, because I don't want this to come off alarmingly pretentious as opposed to simply normal amounts of pretentious. So here's a category of intelligence. Fast. God damn it. Fast. I would say I am fairly slow, not super fast. I'm not the slowest. I know some slower people. I've met slower people. But I've also known lots of much faster people. And I think it's normal to be faster than me. I think it is. I won't say I'm below average, but it's possible. It's possible I'm below average quickness. Sagacious is a new word for you. Interesting. It means having, sage, being of a sage. Sagacious actually is kind of my final boss term. We'll get to it, but that's the one that I think it just encompasses everything. Because I have as the opposite of it immaturity. And to be immature is basically to lack enough of any of this to be tolerable. And maturity is just like the process of gaining traits. And like being a sage is like being the most mature person. Like people come to you because you are so mature. You have the most perspective, which is another word that'll be in here. But I think. No, actually I think I use sagacity for perspective, like to mean basically having as much perspective as possible. So that's like the ultimate culmination term. But okay, so in terms of speed, right? Like, and when I say speed, you're saying in terms of thinking, creating, physically moving. I'm going to say all of it together. Like, I guess the only thing that I think I am fast at compared to other people is choosing words. Um, but it's also like just from practice, like lots and lots and lots of practice of getting faster at it. But like, okay, so I've only been a streamer for a couple of years. Like I started streaming really post transition. I think May and I might have done some streams together, but it's not like I never did them, but it was never commonplace. I did not become a streamer until more recently because I was too fucking slow. Like I just wasn't. I could not think of new things fast enough to to like keep reacting, live. And like I thought slowly, I spoke slowly. I in real life I'm not always super talkative, and when I am talkative, it's because I'm talking about something where I know all of the information. So if I start going fast, like I can rap fast because I know all the words to certain songs and I've practiced them over and over again. So like my ability to yell like you never seen a white person before, jaws on the floor like Pam, like Tommy just burst in the door, started whipping her ass worse than before. The first was divorce was doing her off the furniture. It's because I've been doing that since I was 8. And so, and if I want to, I can sort of clock my brain to sort of talk a little bit faster just because I'm trying to do the thing where I talk a little bit faster. But you see how the words aren't really coming out as intelligent? Like it's kind of like I'm losing my place and I'm getting a little bit repetitive because I'm trying to make space for, like I can't really talk fast like that. I know people who can. I know people who can be having original ideas at that speed. Riley is a very fast person. Don Jolly was who, when I met him, I'm sure he still is this fast, but like he was impressively quick at being able to come up with the whole idea and put it into the perfect words and do it right after what you just said. And you're like, holy fuck, how did you, like, it would take me a second to like he would hit me with so much content in what he was saying that I'd have to like sit back and think for a second before I can respond, because I'm not that fast. But that doesn't mean I can't formulate a response and come back with it, which takes a lot of this other stuff, even if the speed isn't that high, the fact that I even can formulate a response requires some of these other things. Because, if you don't have, say, well, let's just say if you don't have enough sagacity, you won't. Riley seems like a very intelligent dude, quick-witted at least, and apparently he was, by his own description, he was like, if you've ever seen Big Bang Theory episode 1, when Sheldon is more of like an asshole and less of like a dweeb, um, and he's just like really quick and he's always got the answer and he's always a dick about it. That was how Riley was up until he like destroyed his brain by trying to kill himself with spray paint in a closet. And he's still incredibly fast, but he's like, it's just not the same as it used to be. Like he used to be at that like that level. But still being as fast as he is faster than most people that I've ever met. I don't know who he's comparing himself to. I mean, obviously his former self. So I guess it's a sad place to live in the shadow of your own quickness. But maybe sometimes it's nice to slow down, and so that's something I want to stress in this as well. Even if you're dumb at one of these things, it's not always a bad thing. Like being slow is not always a bad thing. You can rush too recklessly into shit. When I use Riley and Don Jolly as examples of people who are fast, like the impressiveness wasn't the speed. It was the fact that it was speed combined with all the rest of it. Speed by itself isn't impressive. Like me trying to go fast. Again, I can do it. It's just I sacrifice too much of the rest for it to be worth it. There are certain things that I can do fast well, like writing. But again, it's a tremendous amount of practice. I was not a fast writer as a teenager. I spent all day writing a poem as a teenager. I've just written thousands and thousands of poems, so at some point it became very easy to do it quickly. But I also always followed that Shiro Bako advice of develop speed early on, the quality will follow. So, all right, being fast, that's one thing, right? So, sensitive. Now, I've broken down sensitive and sensational as two different words here because, again, I don't know if these need to be combined or if these deserve to be separate. Because there's a difference between being sensitive and being sensational. One is more about how you interpret other people or other things, and the other is more about the feeling you create in other things, right? So to be sensitive, I'm taking this very literally. You have 5 senses, maybe 6. And like, how adept are you at using those? This is another place actually where I would put myself on the insensitive side. I would say I've got a relatively low sensitivity, which does contribute to my slowness. Like I'm slow to react because it takes a while for me to fully feel the sensation. Because I'm very like emotionally guarded, and that changes depending on if something hits me right away. Like let's say I burn my hand, I'm gonna be like, because I have because I'm an actor and I have some of these other skills, I'm going to simulate it for you. You know, like that can come out because I just scared myself with how hard I went on that, pretending to be scared there. Jesus, I don't want to go that fast. That going that fast was like, it took a lot out of me. It feels like I had to use my muscles and stuff. I feel like I need a drink of water from touching that fire just now, but that's sensitivity, right? Is like how much do you sense what's going on? How quickly do you notice that it's warm? How quickly do you notice that it smells good? How quickly do you notice that it's dark? How quickly do you notice that someone's saying help? My mom, hypersensitive. My mom will notice a smell from the other side of the house. She will notice an odd noise. She has total misophonia. She cannot handle any kind of noise she doesn't like because she'll notice it from. She'll pick out like one sound from a complicated mix and be intolerant to that sound. Um, she's you know literally all the senses. She's hypersensitive. I am not hypersensitive. So I think this is like a kind of intelligence in a way. It's not really. I think you can work on it. I think I probably could become more sensitive. Like if I put work into being deliberately recognizing my senses, using them more. I just don't use them that much, Like I use my sight and my hearing, but and arguably my taste. I've expanded my taste considerably. So I'll say I've worked to have a more sensitive taste. I've almost worked to have not a sensitive smell. I don't like smelling things. I don't like to. I like that I don't smell anything. I feel like I've gone out of my way to block scents from my nose most of the time. I don't know if that's like all good for me on a survival level, but I have not been in a lot of situations where smelling something was like a good thing unless it's like delicious food, and then it's going to be overpowering anyways. Landon with $5 says, my top 10 video, Mommy Trixie, 10 favorites, which has changed. Yawara topped Anohana. Fist me. Is this new? I'm not doing requests right now, Landon. I'm fucking explaining. I mean, we'll watch it later, but I'm explaining this list of words I made. This big adjective list of different ways you can be smart or dumb. I am not high sensitivity, nor am I particularly fast. And these two things, again, are connected. I am much faster to notice things in audio visual, than in other like media, but other people are faster. Other people are definitely like I'm always around people who notice things before me. Like just the chat will notice things before me. Bird will notice things before me. My mom will notice things before me. I'm not super fast or sensitive. But sensational, on the other hand, versus numbing. I think I'm pretty good at bringing sensations out of other people deliberately. Like I think because of my own like lacking sensitivity, I feel like in order to make someone else have a sensitivity will have to go out of my way. Like I think I expect more. I think I have like a high expectation of how much is necessary to make you feel something. And so I overexert just a little bit, I'm always like, for being as reserved of a person as I am by nature, I think I'm always like a little OD compared to what I'm trying to do, like in my head, I'm being way more calm and rational than how I think I come off through speaking. Now, granted, this has changed over time where, people keep telling me that the way I am post transition in particular is like a different person. And when I listen back to my old content, what I hear is it is the difficulty of doing something that like wasn't natural to me in the first place. Again, like speaking a lot and trying to create a sensation in you that is on the level that it would like reach me. Like I would need somebody to have been shouting at me at the time is what I'm kind of trying to say. Like a lot of the content I watched back then was just loud. It was like stuff that you can hear that I could hear over the voice in my head. I said this about Finn McKenty when he retired last year, that I was like, I think he was kind of my comfort content because his voice just fills the air, in a way that even if I'm like really not paying attention, I can still kind of hear everything he's saying because his voice is just so fucking loud, and I don't think that I am trying to reach people who need necessarily as much intensity as I do even. Or maybe I'm just trying to mellow people out. I don't know. But I feel like I feel like my content, at the very least, creates the sensation it is supposed to. So I think that rather than being numbing, I would like to think that I am sensational. I create sensation. I do not numb sensation in people. I don't really know if this is like a vector that is even measurable, actually. But I just keep thinking about Kendrick Lamar saying of Drake, uh, I make music that electrify them. You make music that pacify them, you know, and like my content tends to cause people to go do something. So that to me is sensational, you know. Okay. So next up, brilliant versus dull. This was one of the first ones I came up with when I was thinking of like words that mean intelligent, kind of, but what do they really mean? You know, like what does it mean to be brilliant or to be dull? And I think it is similar to sensational, but more in like in ideas way. I think this is one of my highest categories is brilliance. And brilliance is like I would say having an idea that like literally like imagine a star, like the glint of light, like something noticeable. Maybe noticeability is also a word that can be used, but only in a positive way, you know, because noticeable can obviously be negative. But brilliance is like I can't help but keep looking, you know, like I can't help but keep noticing this thing. Um, so like, you know, I would say that something about my perspective and my voice as an extreme outsider lends me a brilliance where like I will always be interesting because I'm so different, if that makes sense. And it's odd in a way that I never framed myself like that in the early stages of my career. I think partly out of fear of like seeming like a pick me or whatever, but like I just didn't think that my life was as weird as it is, you know, until like a point where there was a threshold I crossed around when I started hanging out with Riley, Admit, and Bird, where my audience was like, "Oh, you're way weirder of a person than we are," you know, like because they happened to meet me in a period where I was doing something similar to them, but that was not like that wasn't the way it had always been for me, you know, like people saw me being in one room for years at a time, and that is like super rare in my life. You know, it wasn't like a normal circumstance for me. So when that started changing and things for me went back to normal, for the audience it was a total shift, you know. And so like um but I think that the brilliance has shined through that, where the reason I still have an audience in spite of that shift is that what made my content good in the first place was not that I was like those people. It was actually that I was so different from them and was bringing my different perspective to them, you know? And I think a lot of people heard me say stuff and then went like, "Oh, I knew that all along instinctively." It's like, "Yeah, but you never would have fucking thought about it if not for me. So shut the fuck up. I'm the brilliant one, not you. Look at this list I made. You didn't do this. You couldn't have done this. You would never have this idea. This is brilliance." Okay? Now I am officially being pretentious. All right. So, understanding versus mistaken. And this is one that I don't know if this is like a permanent state that a person can be in, of like being generally understanding, or if it's more like you understand certain things and in other ways you're mistaken. I have to assume that we are all mistaken in some ways, you know. um but I do feel like there are certain people who are just more capable of just getting it, you know, like without having to have as much explained, you know. This is another one of the places where I feel like I depends on the subject, but like there are certain things that I overstand, that I just tremendously, I get in a way that is above normal amounts of getting it, and then there are things that I am definitely mistaken about or don't understand at all. So I don't know if that means that I'm less understanding or if it just means that circumstantially I'm not educated in those things. Would I be mistaken if I was given the information? That's the question, Like I feel like there are some people who can receive all of the information and remain mistaken because they cannot understand, So in that way, I would say that I'm pretty understanding, but it doesn't mean I understand everything. It just means that when I learn something, I tend to understand it, you know. Um, Although I have misunderstood many things before and had to be corrected. So I wouldn't say that I'm in the top. I wouldn't put myself in like above average on understanding. I put myself at average understanding. So right now, my points, I hope you're all judging yourself right now. Are you sensitive or insensitive? First of all, everybody in chat, let me know. Are you overall, would you say you are above average compared to other people in your life, other people you can think of, in sensitivity, sensationalism, brilliance, and understanding? I would say I am probably below average sensitivity, possibly average or even below average sensationalism if I'm really thinking about it, like, in all circumstances. Above average brilliance, average, maybe slightly above average understanding. That's where I think I stand so far. Gary says, I'm definitely below average in sensitivity, maybe a bit above in understanding. That sounds right. I'm very sensitive, but I'm absorbing the other concepts still. Says Serial Experiments Domina. Gary always is still not quite sure how to gauge my sensationalism. Your art definitely creates some level of sensation. Like I feel something looking at the girl in your avatar. I assume you drew that. Looking at your art. This idea is sensitive in how stuff affects me or in how I deal with others. Well, in the case of sensitive, I mean it more literally, like using your senses. Like, do you tend to notice particular sounds right away? Do you tend to notice if something's happening visually? Do you tend to notice if it smells? Do you tend to notice, a taste before it even hits your lips? Are you very sensitive to touch? That kind of sensitivity. I put myself in the low sensitivity relatively. Not like super low, but I just am not as prone to notice a sensation right away. Whereas my mom, again, hypersensitive. She'll notice anything right away. In that sense. My mom's also hypersensational. My mom cannot communicate without knowing that you are feeling something. Like she will not like let you go until she's like seen an effect on your face transpire from what she's saying. I'm not quite on that level of like, confirm that you're feeling for me, but I try to push it up to at least a level where I'm like pretty confident that you're fucking feeling me, So that's what I mean by sensational versus numbing. Do you generally cause sensation in other people, or do you cause people to go numb to your presence? Like they try to not. well, I shouldn't say that they're trying not to sense you, that they just aren't sensing you, that you just don't create. There are some people who just walk into a room and nobody notices them and they stay low key and they do not get noticed. I walk into a room and people notice me and then start ignoring me on purpose. Like, that's my usual experience, is I can tell I'm being noticed and I can tell I'm being ignored, whereas some people walk in and nobody notices them at all. But that's a difference of, now I think that me noticing I'm being noticed, there's an element of sensitivity there where I'm using my eyes to notice that's sensitive, but me reading the situation, that's not the sensitive part. We're going to have other words for that. We got other words for how you actually feel about, noticing that everybody's looking at you, or just social perceptiveness. We'll get into that through other words. Is gaming ability a form of intelligence? It probably comes through a few of these. I mean, sensitivity, my low sensitivity as a person definitely contributes to me not being as good at games, because I literally don't see, like, I don't register what I'm seeing quickly enough. Like, I cannot count frames. I can't, like, I just can't see it that way. To me, I'm seeing the full motion. I just see, like, oh, a punch. I don't see that punch is 16 frames, um, and I can tell what frame I'm on. I'd have to break it down deliberately and study it before I would be able to, like, follow it. And even then, again, it would take great practice before I could meaningfully, use that information. Whereas there's other people who just, like, reflexively can tell, it makes them quite good at fighting games or action games. Ellen says, I'm very much the type of person that goes by unnoticed, which I like to use to my advantage. And I know how to like, be harder to notice, but what I tend to do is the Assassin's Creed methodology of, the best place to hide is in plain sight. Where if you are, like, so flamboyant that people, like, their sense is, I don't want anything to do with this, they go out of their way to ignore you, which is kind of even safer. Because then, even if you start, like, literally trying to draw attention to yourself, people will go out of their way to not pay attention to it. So that's its own way of hiding, which is what I think generally, like, when like a group of misbehaving, miscreant young men is hanging about in public, teenagers or young adults, whether it's a soccer team or something, that's generally what they're doing, is, like, trying to create a smoke screen of, like, don't look over here, you don't want anything to do with this, Okay, so we've covered sensitive, sensational, brilliant, which again is, like, how much do you keep drawing attention back to yourself because of the strength of, like, your uniqueness, which in my case is one of my stronger aspects. I'm brilliant. I am not dull. And then understanding, how easy is it for you to grasp a concept once all the information has been given to you. I feel like my understanding is, like, average level. Like, it's not that impressive compared to how it should be considering what I do. Okay, but there's one overarching final boss that just happens to be the fifth one I wrote down. As I went over with Gary, sagacity is basically maturity, but, maturing is the process of getting better at any and all of these. And so to be immature is basically to be at the start, And even if you're a baby, it's possible you're, like, a visionary baby, But I don't think there is a sagacious baby. I just don't think that's a possibility. I don't think there's a baby you're going to come to for sage-like wisdom. Sagacious is the final form of maturity. And it comes from being, just from being like, I would say, if you are generally pretty well balanced and at a decently high level in a pretty good number of these, people are going to start treating you like a sage. I think I am at a slightly above average level of sagacity. Not a tremendous level, but again, I've got stats in weird places, right? Like I've got high brilliance, which is not necessarily a common trait. Not a ton of brilliant people. I got a really high brilliance stat. So you might look to me for maturity in being brilliant, but not necessarily maturity in sensitivity, sensationalism, or understanding, So right now, right now, if we're just talking about the 4 traits we've gone over so far, my sagacity level is fucking not at all. I seem pretty immature so far. But we'll see how that changes as we go. Okay. Reasonable versus unreasonable. This is where we start getting more into what is traditionally considered like logic and intelligence, right? Reasoning. But what reasoning really means is your ability to partake in reason with something, right? Like, how do you, it will be a very long stream. Reasonability is like your ability to kind of interrogate and come to an agreement, right? Like, your ability to judge the situation and sort of like come up with a reason. So you can be reasonable or unreasonable. And I think that for the most part, I am probably above average reasonability. I am always willing to reason. I'm always willing to listen to reason. If somebody has a reason, I want to know the reason. Actually, I'm interested in reasoning, even when there's some people are like, I don't care what the reason is. What they did is evil. And I'm like, I do care what the reason is. Actually, I would love to know the reason, because if I know what their reasoning is, I feel like I could argue with it. I feel like I could reason with them. So I would say actually that I feel like I have a naturally pretty high reasonability, and I definitely get that from my mom. Now, again, having a high reasonability doesn't automatically mean a good thing if you're not good at everything else, right? So like, even in this is going to sound, it's like, okay, so my mom's a very intelligent person, and she's got a higher IQ than me, and she's better at a lot of these things than I am. I think both of us are pretty much on par on reasonability. But however, what we are trying to reason with each other with, who ends up seeming, like, or who has the better reasoning, comes down to all the rest of this circumstantially, right? So like, if circumstantially I am more astute than she is, and it's not that she's being unreasonable if she disagrees with me. We have to reason through it. I have to make her realize that her reasoning is unreasonable, and then she will reason her way over to the side of having the same opinion as me. But the ability to do that, to go from unreasonable to reasonable, is reasonable. So overall, I would say both me and my mom, very reasonable. Doesn't mean correct. Just means that you are willing to be reasoned with. And I think this is a pretty important trait. People who are unreasonable are some of the hardest fucking people to deal with. Because what do you do? Like, short of physically stopping them, what do you do if they won't reason with you? So that's why I think we tend to put a lot of, like, when we think about intelligence, when we think about rationality, we tend to put a lot of it into reasonability. Where, like, if you are capable of being reasoned with, it makes fitting into society so much easier. This is like the keystone to a decent society, is just people being able to reason with one another. That's it. So if you are somebody who can't listen to reason, please work on it. I don't care how evil or detestable you think someone is. Hear their reasoning, because then you can argue against it. And if you can't argue against it, then you might be like too dumb at everything. Like you need to work on the rest of this stuff too, you know? Like if you can't figure out how to reason with somebody, that's a problem. It doesn't matter how wrong they are. You have to be able to now if they're being unreasonable, that's when you get to write them off. It's easy to write off somebody who's being unreasonable because, again, like society relies on us reasoning with one another. So if you won't do it, people are just going to be like, well, you like, I don't know what to do with you. Again, like aside from physical, restraining, what can I do to deal with you if you won't be reasoned with, um, you just can't. There's nothing you can do. So this is why, like, a lot of, especially in the US, when people get into confrontation and arguments, what they're really just trying to prove is that they are more reasonable than the other person. A lot of the times, if they can't win the argument, just seeming more reasonable is the victory condition. There's actually some pretty good Charisma on Command videos about this. There's this one great video about how in this one debate, Malcolm Gladwell kind of made himself look like weak, because even though he was correct and he was arguing with like a white supremacist, like some kind of anti-Semite, he got so emotional and so heated that he literally stopped like listening to reason. And it's like, well, you're in a debate. Like your only job is to look like the reasonable one. It doesn't matter how right you are. This is why me and Destiny were talking past each other, because my belief is being correct is all that matters in the eyes of the audience, and his belief is that's not what a debate is, And like, yeah, if you're in the context of a fucking forum where there's like people spectating and you look like you're losing your cool, yeah, you're gonna look like the idiot in the situation. Now, granted, I was never imagining myself losing my cool at a flat earther. I was imagining like smugly sitting there with sunglasses on going, Earth's round, buddy, but nonetheless, we won't relitigate that again. Reasonable, unreasonable. Next, empathetic or unempathetic. How easily do you understand what someone else is feeling? I have actually pretty decently good empathy. I think possibly above average based on the way I see other people act. Because I can usually look at somebody and gauge what they're feeling pretty quickly, especially if I know the person. If I know the range of their emotions, like sometimes I meet somebody and I can tell they're feeling something, but I don't know how to interpret it because I don't know them. It's like, okay, you seem mad, but I don't know if you're like mad like how I get mad, or if you're mad like how someone else, I don't know what kind of mad you are. But I pick up on vibes quickly. I pick up on tension very fast. If somebody's feeling tense, I will notice right away. I will feel it in the vibes, and I will start trying to either get away from them or unwind that tension. I can always tell if somebody's upset with me. I can always tell if someone is, just in a good mood. I'm the type of person who is good at telling people how they seem to be feeling, and then they're like, oh, I guess I do feel that way. Like, oh, wow, you could tell, So I'm pretty good at telling how somebody's feeling. Does that mean that I know how to react? That's a whole fucking different ball game. Being able to empathize does not mean knowing how to react to the empathy. And if anything, this is my brokenly high empathy stat is the hardest part of participating in society for me, because I notice what people are feeling when they're not trying to be noticed. And I don't know how to deal with that, because there's two approaches you can take. Respect the person's privacy and leave it alone, but now you're dealing with somebody who you can tell is in a shitty mood, or try to work with them, try to unravel this thing so that you don't have to feel this fucking thing anymore. I tend to fall into the second category. And if I can't do that, I just shut up. Like I don't know how to like handle, oh, this person's upset and I'm just going to let them be upset because it's making me upset, you know? Now, sometimes that can help. Sometimes just get upset with them and it calms them down because they're like, well, I don't know why you're upset, or now I feel goofy about whatever I was upset about. So I guess that's one way I could handle this more often. But it tends to be that my reaction is like, I want to undo it. Like, oh, people come into my Discord all the time and we trauma dump and they say something like upsetting. And my immediate feeling is like, what can I say that's going to make them feel better? What can I say that's going to do? Who can I hire to fucking heal their life right now? Like, I want to jump through the screen and do something about it, but I'm not really that good at actually reacting to the empathy. Would you say you still have two brains? That was what my dad said, Trixie, and I never liked that he said that. Unless you mean two brains, like different or different partitions of it. My dad used to joke I'd replace my heart with the second brain. I've never forgiven him for that. Is why it's in the lyrics of that song. Anyway, high capacity versus low capacity. Here's another place that I think I do pretty well. Capacity is literally how much information can you fit inside of your brain. I think a lot of otaku are people who like have high capacity like for information, but aren't necessarily, exceptional in certain other ways. And so again, all of these are forms of smart. All of these are ways that you can be smart, but because we only think about it in terms of smart versus dumb, a lot of people who are sitting here like, well, I have this smart thing, but I don't have this smart thing. How do I am I smart or am I dumb? Am I a genius because I have a high capacity, or am I an idiot because I have low empathy? This is a question going through a lot of otaku's heads. The answer is both, but instead of thinking, am I smart or am I dumb? Think about this entire fucking chart here. Why don't you? Just for a laugh, just for a giggle, give it a long think. So, like, I think that the way that the brain works, how it is capable to expand its own capacity is through partitioning, right? Like, if you sort of categorically associate a bunch of information and then you like kind of compress that into a zip folder, and then you can uncompress or recompress it, so like sometimes I refer to my anime brain, where I'll say, like, somebody will start showing me anime clips and I'll start talking about producers and stuff, and then at some point I'll have to like really think, because a name is like, Kazuya Tsurumaki. That's a name that's not hard to summon, right? Tatsuyuki Nagai. That's a name I used to confuse with Kazuya Tsurumaki. Now we're getting a little deeper into my anime brain. All right. Mamiko Noto. You just keep saying more Japanese names until you slip into anime brain, and then suddenly you have access to all of that information, and I could just sit here and talk about anime all day once I've activated that. Surprisingly, naming those three Japanese names did not cause me to slip into anime brain just there. I stayed focused. I stayed on point. I'm in whatever this is brain right now. Blown out. There you go. List of names. So I would say that my brain is pretty good at doing the partition thing and creating new sectors for more information and zipping it away and packing it away, and it seems like I can just keep putting more and more into my brain. I have had days where I was like, I can't like I need to sleep or else I can't think about anything else. You know, like I literally will jump between like 6 whole different realms of thought in the same day, you know, where I'm doing like a big hip hop thing, and then I'm doing a big anime thing, and then I'm doing a totally unrelated gaming live stream, and then I'm talking to Bird, you know, so I'm in like my real life, you know, and then I'm doing another thing. It can get complicated. It can get hectic. Then I start having an original idea, you know, writing a book. Like at some point, I can't fit any more info in that day, but it's all still there. My capacity is very large. So, yeah. I can also fit a huge dick in my butt. Whoa! All right. The next one is fast versus slow, which I already went over at the start, but I am not especially fast. And after that, this one is hard for me to. This one's a little more difficult for me to quantify what this is, but I think we all know instinctively what it is. It's just hard to put it into terms, which is witty versus, and the best word I could think of it is boring. Like, so this is where like Bird would be at like the top, right? Of witty is like when you hear something and you immediately have something funny to say about it. Well, okay, I shouldn't even say immediately because there's a fastness involved in that, and Bird is also very fast. So he compensates for my slowness constantly. Part of why I know that I'm slow is that Bird is fast. You know, like to such a degree that he might as well be Char to my regular Zaku pilot, like literally 3 times faster. So that was my long. Yeah, I just said I was literally dating Char. Hair twirl there. Uh, he's literally 3 times faster than me and super witty. So like, witty is coming up with the comeback. Yeah, like you know, when they talk about having a rapier wit, what they mean is that you're really good at riposte. You know, like you see it coming and you immediately have a reaction, a comeback. So, and to be boring, I would think means just like you'd never react. You know, like somebody who just oh okay, you know, like um and the way to be witty is yes and. This is pretty much what improv comedy exists to teach you, is to be witty. It's to try to think of the next thing. And they teach you don't ever say no. And what they mean by that is you can't reject the premise of what the person just said to you. So if I say like, I'm the king of Arabia, and then you go, no, you're not, well, then the bit has been reset to 0. Now I have to be another person, you know, and I'm already committed to being the king of Arabia. But if I go, I'm the king of Arabia, and you go, who sent you? You know, like that's not particularly witty, but it is a response. That's the level of wit I'm at. I think of something reasonable and normal. I have a response. It's just kind of boring. It's not super witty. I couldn't think of something witty. I literally couldn't think of something witty quickly enough to think of like a funny response to I'm the king of Africa. I can't. I cannot think. I'm not. Did I even say Africa the first time? Whatever. I am not witty. I can be, and it helps to be in a certain state of mind or to be around witty people. Like when you're in the expectation of, oh shit, I got to be ready to think of stuff. But generally, when I have been around witty people, I'm quiet because I just want to listen to them be witty, and I don't want to fuck it up by trying to tag a joke and being like the chick. You know, when people call the chick, this is what they're talking about, because guys are all browbeating each other about being witty all the time. And you know, when a chick says something that's not like at the level that these guys have been tormenting each other all day, then they're like, ugh, you know, you've ruined our little sword fighting, cock. I started picturing guys pushing their cocks together, and then that was all I could think about, and words left me. All right. This is another one where I'm not sure if this is broadly applicable or if this only applies to specific situations, because I have apt versus unapt. And apt would mean that there is that you have aptitude in things. Obviously, we all have aptitude in certain things and not apt, and we're unapt at other things. I don't know if it's like a broadly applicable. Like, I think apt might be too circumstantial for this list. I think aptitude would be determined by the other factor. So I'm gonna cross off apt. I don't like that. I don't think it fits. I wasn't sure about it in the first place, but now that we've been talking through what these are, I don't think apt fits. I don't think it's apt. I think it's unapt for this list. And the reason I was able to do that just now is because I am super duper adaptable and not at all rigid or pathological at all. As you can see that I crossed out the word conservative, because sometimes adapting does mean being conservative. But not adapting means being rigid or pathological. Although I don't know if pathological even is necessary. Like, it can be that there is a pathological adaptation that's necessary. So rigid might be the better word. I have a very, very, very above average adaptability. And that just comes from growing up under constantly changing circumstances. Things never developed into a sense of normalcy for me. So I don't expect a sense of normalcy. I don't expect things to ever. I never expect today to be the same as yesterday. Every morning I wake up and I spend a considerable amount of time figuring out what is today. I usually spend hours and hours just like, what is today? Because nothing feels like it came guaranteed from yesterday. So I'm very adaptable, not very rigid. I would say maybe I have certain ways that I can be rigid in like physical habits, but I try to change them deliberately if I notice it. If I notice that I've fallen into doing one thing over and over, I might be like, this is a problem. That's another reason I don't think pathological necessarily is the opposite of adaptable, because you can have certain pathological habits and still overall be adaptable. So yeah, we'll just say that rigid is the opposite, and we'll cross out pathological here. And again, pathological is not that again that any of these is necessarily like a bad thing. It is not always bad to be rigid in every circumstance. It's not bad to be boring. It's not bad to be slow circumstantially. If you're a fucking buzzer beater trivia player, you need to be kind of fast. If you are a fighting game player, you need to be kind of fast. If you are a stand-up comedian or a improv comedian, you need to be witty and fast, at least somewhat, and hopefully understanding and somewhat brilliant. But those aren't as easy to come by in those realms. Okay, so next up is perceptive versus ignorant. And we're going to use a very literal definition of the word ignorant here, because ignorant is kind of just used to mean like uneducated or like not knowing. Like, we use ignorant to mean I don't know, or like I am ignorant. But I think ignorant should mean you literally are ignoring the information. You are ignorant on, like, to be ignorant is to be not paying attention, And that's what I think we really are frustrated with people for, is that we think they should know. Usually if we think somebody's ignorant, it's like, you should know this because you're in the same place I am. How did we both end up here, but my experience has led me to know something and yours hasn't. And it makes you think it must be because I was perceiving my surroundings and you were ignoring them. So to be perceptive basically means to literally perceive what's going on. Obliviousness is also a good word. That might be even better. Perceptive versus oblivious. Yeah, let's put, because I don't think I have oblivious on here yet. Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Because, and the reason we're going to do that is that I don't think being ignorant is always a problem. If you are literally ignoring things on purpose, I do it a lot. Why? Z Cypher just put it perfectly. Ignorance is bliss. I don't want to notice. For instance, I can think of a time like probably a couple of years ago. We were in some kind of restaurant and there was like a family at the table next to us, like a relatively large family. And this kid who was like a little, skinny, blue-eyed kid with glasses, just like me at that age, clearly bored, dissociated, out of the situation, who said something, like asked some kind of question, and it wasn't like an offensive question or anything, but he asked his dad something a few times, and the dad got this like indignation about him and literally took this kid off to the side to go like spank him, like off towards the bathrooms in the middle of this fucking pizza restaurant downtown, like in, I don't know where the fuck we were. And I can see this happening because I'm being perceptive of it, and I'm just pissed at this guy. And I can't do anything about it. Like, what am I going to go, like, fight this man in front of his family to avenge his son? No, that's retarded. I'm not doing that. Like, but I would prefer that I had been oblivious of that situation. Or at the very least, had been ignorant of that situation. Because I couldn't do anything about it anyways. So, I would say that I am decently perceptive, but I am also pretty ignorant because my brain loves to ignore things on purpose. And it's like, it's systematic. It's not something I always am like I say on purpose, but I don't mean on purpose as in I'm like putting thought into being like, oh, I'm going to ignore that. It's like my brain notices and stops paying attention. It just like partitions that away. I saw it happen in a way that freaked me out recently because I was kind of dissociated and I was going to the grocery store. I went to Food Lion and I'm walking in and there was a woman who kind of, I guess just because she was like, I think I just appeared in the path that she was anticipating leaving the store through. And just because of that, our eyes met for a second. And in that second, I saw what she looked like. And then I saw her turn into fuzz as I passed. Like, as I kept walking, she just went meow and like faded out of my ability to even like recognize the details of what she looks like. And I still kind of remember what I remember her looking like before that happened because it struck me so much that I was like, I just phased that bitch out of the world in my mind. And then I stopped noticing people after that. Like I went the rest of the store just every time I can always tell there's somebody there, but I'm ignoring them because I don't want to know anything about them. I don't want to find out it's a beautiful woman that I'm going to be like, oh man, I wish I could talk to her. I don't want to find out that it's somebody who's giving me a weird look and then be like, oh, I live in a prejudiced place. I don't want to find out that it's the worst part, usually someone abusing their kids. I don't want to know. I don't want to see it, But I am perceptive. I'm just ignorant. I'm not super oblivious. I can be oblivious, but it usually is because I am ignoring so much that I'm becoming oblivious. So I would say that my obliviousness rises the more I feel uncomfortable in a situation. Where, like, if I'm at a convention where I feel super comfortable because everyone around me is a freak, I can just like completely tell everything going on with everybody all the time. Like I can always tell everything that's happening, and I feel it's fun because I am having a good time being there. Whereas, yeah, as Eli put it, my brain forces me to ignore things for my own sanity. Exactly. Mine is particularly adept at it. It's really good at blocking out like a tremendous amount of sensory detail. Because again, perceptiveness too high and ignorance is bliss. Um, but I wouldn't consider myself fully oblivious. I would say I'm a little above average perceptiveness, but not like tremendously. I would say I'm better than most people at maintaining perception. Where like some people, I think literally once it turns off, they can't get it back. I'm a lot better at turning it back on because I recognize it as a thing that's happening, you know? Okay, the next category, graceful versus ungraceful. This is, in my mind, kind of a type of physical intelligence, but it extends beyond just like gracefulness in how you move. It's also grace in how you approach people and in how you act, right? And what I think graciousness is it's sort of similar to openness. It's like a willingness to allow things to pass through you, if that makes sense. Like when I think of the grace of God, right? Like to go by the grace of God is basically to let God have control over what's happening. And so like to be gracious is to give some control over, basically. So like to be gracious with yourself, I think like if you are trying to be very elaborate with your movements and have that kind of grace, I'm not doing a good job of it because I'm not that gracious, but like if you're trying to exhibit some sort of grace in your movement, it would be like you're letting the feeling of what naturally flows come over you. Like I keep doing this because I'm trying to communicate an idea of like something that once you start it, your hands will keep doing it naturally, if that makes sense. Like to move with a flow is to let it kind of just go the way it wants to go. Like if I wasn't trying to stop, then and I was just letting it go. So for instance, conversationally, right? Like let's say that trying to think of I'm trying to imagine a scenario where I can give grace to somebody versus not giving grace, right? Okay, let's say that I asked you to hand me this pen, and you start handing me this pen, and then before I fully grab onto the other end, you let go, and the pen falls to the ground, right? Some people who are not gracious at all will immediately get mad at you and be like, why did you drop the pen? Because they think that you did it on purpose or that you're trying to fuck with them. To be gracious would be to be like, oh, uh, sorry, or even like I guess the most gracious thing to do would be pick it up for them, right? To be like, oh, I recognize that you were trying to give me this pen, and I respect that. Like, I respect the fact that you were trying to do that so much that I'm going to like correct your mistake for you. Like that is extra gracious. Whereas if I was like, pick it up, I can't believe you dropped a pen on my floor, that's like the least gracious way I could respond, right? And then of course, if I went so far as to like pick up the pen and then be like, mademoiselle, you dropped your, that's like being ostentatiously gracious. um I think that there are some people who like I think Bird is more gracious than I am, but it's like but not necessarily more patient, which is an interesting combination, right? Like I can be very patient with somebody even though like intellectually I am giving them not as much grace. Like I think this person sucks, but I'm going to pretend that they're fine. Whereas Bird is more likely to withhold the judgment that somebody sucks and to act more honestly, but just literally being gracious, whereas I'm kind of being like two-faced about it. So I wouldn't consider myself a tremendously gracious person. I would say it's something I've worked on. It's something I've gotten better at, but probably in my lower stats would I put grace. It's one of the things that's kind of masculinizing. It's why I would consider myself more of a tomboy, on the femme scale, because gracefulness is not my strong suit, and that is often taken as a very feminine trait. I don't think it naturally is per se, but society be what society be. So next up, merciful versus unmerciful. This is another one that I do think is a form of intelligence, because like a lot of these things that just sound like being a good person, like being a good person is good for you. And I don't just mean that in like a mental health way. I mean like when you are good and other people think you're good, they treat you better. Like people want to be good to a good person. If somebody thinks they can't be good to you because you're too good for them, they avoid you. They're like, "Oh, you're too good for me. I don't want to be around you." Like it just means you get to be around better people. It can be a little sad if maybe you wanted to take those people with you, but you just got to help them work on whatever category they make them recognize what they are actually good at. Because categorically, there's no way you suck at all of this. It's just not possible. You cannot be failing in 40 different fucking categories of intelligence. I don't believe you if you say so. You must be something here. on the and again, I don't even think being slow or boring is bad, or even being oblivious is kind of bad. This isn't a good thing to be, but being ungraceful has its place. Sometimes you bring out the ungraceful person to deal with the ungraceful person. So anyway, mercy versus unmerciful. So this kind of plays into what I was saying before about that I might not be that gracious, but I am very merciful by comparison. Actually, Bird, quite the opposite. Because he is so gracious, if you were to trample on that grace, he is not going to exhibit any mercy in response. He is very, like, if you fucked him over, it's over. Like if you really, now again, it's not easy to make him mad. He offers a lot of grace, but if you make Bird mad, he's never going to speak to you again. He's going to block you. He's going to tell people you suck. He's not going to ever want to have anything to do with you. Me, I am a little bit more merciful. You all saw what happened with Roy Thomas, right? I was aggressive, but as soon as Roy revealed themselves to be a decent person, we're practically friends now. Roy Thomas hangs out in my Discord, has like the fifth most comments on my channel or some shit. Friends might be a strong word, but I don't hate Roy Thomas. I could have been merciless. I could have never exhibited any mercy towards Roy Thomas. Who is Roy Thomas? Oh, Moho. You got to go through the whole arc. Watch these videos. Hold on. Let me get the list. Let me list out the videos that will explain the Roy Thomas. It was a little arc we had about a month ago here on the channel. Okay, watch these videos in order. You have to start with the Gundam GQ's review that's on my... You don't have to watch this one, actually. There's a Gundam GQ's review on the We Watch Anime channel that started this. And then I think from there, I Am Never Watching Your Favorite Anime, I think might have been the next part of this arc. And then YouTubers Aren't Special. That's the real beginning of Roy Thomas, of me talking about Roy Thomas. So you could probably skip there. Skip to the video YouTubers Aren't Special from a month ago. And that will open the Roy Thomas arc. Then the video right after that, Create Space for Rage, The Ballad of Roy Thomas. That's where we really drill in on Roy Thomas. So YouTubers Aren't Special kicks it off. Create Space for Rage is like 100%. This is the Roy Thomas video. But then there's a dramatic twist. In the next video, Nobody is Nobody, is the redemption of Roy Thomas, where I'm so nice, I'm so merciful to Roy Thomas that they became a fan and ended up in the channel ever since. And then after that, I don't know if I talk about Roy Thomas in the How I Became a Frontier Psychiatrist video, but I probably do. Probably mention them there too. But yeah, mainly YouTubers Aren't Special, Create Space for Rage, and Nobody is Nobody. That trilogy is what I will call the Roy Thomas trilogy. So from now on, if I bring up Roy Thomas, the Roy Thomas trilogy is YouTubers Aren't Special, Create Space for Rage, The Ballad of Roy Thomas, and Nobody is Nobody. That's the arc. What was his secret identity, like Tom Shotgun or something? They still insist that that's a friend. Roy Thomas is a they them. Roy Thomas is not a he. I know Roy is a very masculine name, but they go by Roy Alice Thomas in the Discord, and they are obsessed with shoujo. Like Jim Shooter, yes. Roy still insists that Jim Shooter is a friend and not a bespoke identity. I'll believe it when I see it. Okay, anyway, point is, I'm pretty merciful. I'm not the most merciful by any stretch, but I'm not the least merciful by any stretch either. I think I might actually be above average merciful, because a lot of people are not at all, you know. Now, maybe not. I'll say I'm just on average. I'm average level merciful. Okay. Next up is discernment versus indiscretion. I have to look up exactly what discernment means. To be sure, the ability to judge well, perception in the absence of judgment with a view to obtain... Wait. Hold on. Is it the ability to judge well or the ability to not judge? Perception in the absence of judgment is the opposite of judging well. I'm so mad at this language. Being able to comprehend what is obscure. Okay, that's how I want to use it, is the ability to recognize something out of obscurity. So discernment would be like... But I have as the opposite indiscretion. So like... You know what? This feels circumstantial again. This is another one where I'm not sure... Christians use discernment to mean like picking up on a vibe. Interesting. Or following your gut. I would consider it more like being able to parse like something specific out of, like, you know, noise to signal. Basically, being able to find the signal in noise. In that way, I would say I have really great discernment, because I am capable of like just taking in a massive amount of raw information and figuring out what is the common thread between that. If that's discernment, I'm great at that. That's kind of foundational to my career, actually. I was explaining this on a recent stream that like a lot of my job is just looking at a lot of stuff and then noticing a common thread and drawing a circle around it. So in that sense, I would say discern to me means the same as differentiate. Yes, exactly. To differentiate. But I would say that it's more like, because differentiate doesn't necessarily imply like a skill or like a positive, you know, like you can tell that two things are different, but I feel like discernment implies that you can tell the right thing is different, you know? Like it could be that you could differentiate two things, but you can't tell which one is good and which one's bad. But discernment would be able to do that. I think that's how I'm thinking of these words. Indiscretion would be like, I don't care. You know, like give me the good, give me the bad, give me all of it. It means nothing to me. It's all the same. Just give me all of it. You know, would be indiscretion. Slop content slop content requires indiscretion. Like the reason that you can sit there and scroll through YouTube all day is that like you don't want to exhibit enough discretion to have to like go find something meaningful. So you'll just keep going, you know? But like discretion, viewer discretion is advised, you know, means literally like I'm deciding to put good information into my brain. Like I would say that's where I'm going to put discretion is like when you decide deliberately that like I want to make sure that I consume things that make me better and not worse, you know. So I would say I have actually really high discretion. This is another one that I excel in. Actually, is discernment. Discernment. I'm not at all in indis. I don't want the word indiscreet. I am indiscreet. That's the opposite of secretive. Just indiscerning maybe is the word I want rather than indiscretion. Undiscerning. I don't know if that's a fucking word. I have a discerning taste when it comes to coffee. I'm super picky, not so picky when it comes to webcomics. I read everything I could. And that's another, yeah, I did say this is a difficult one because it feels like it's more incidental and certain. Like, because I'm not super discerning when it comes to coffee. I've been drinking black coffee constantly lately, and I've been making a bunch of different blends, and like I can tell that they are different. I could not tell you how they're different, you know, like and granted that's just coffee inexperience. I'm pretty new to it. I pretty much just started drinking black coffee all the time. Um that said, if I gained the experience, I think I probably could. Because, like, I can discern the difference between different beer styles, for instance. And a lot of people are like, I don't know, it's just beer. But, like, if you've had enough of them and you're paying attention to what they are, eventually you figure it out. Like, I don't know if I could, like, blind taste test to determine what a beer was. Because a lot of the time there's a lot of marketing terms that they don't mean something strict. You know, like a blonde ale could be a different thing at different breweries. But I think if it was the difference between like a stout, a porter, and a Hefeweizen, I think I could do it. You know, I think I could discern those three beers by taste. Um, so yeah, we'll say discerning versus undiscerning. Forget indiscretion. That's the opposite of discreet, and that's not necessarily. I mean, discreet. I have some other things that mean kind of similar to that are more like a thing you actually can like measure. Discernment versus undiscernment. Okay. Now we have accountable versus unaccountable. Uh-oh. My accountability is about as low as it could possibly be. And what is accountability? I would describe it as not so much like perceptiveness of yourself, but like being able to literally account for what you have done. Like being able to keep track of yourself. We'll put it that way. Like taking stock of what you are doing and like what are the effects of it, you know? Is integrity in here? It is not. I don't think. What is the opposite of integrity? What is the adjective form of integrity also? Integritus? I don't know what the like what is a person who has integrity called? Or I guess that would be the noun form? No. The adjective form, right? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, accountability. If you are accountable, it means that you keep track of what you have done. C Cypher says you can count on me. I knew I could. I was, as soon as I got to this, my thought, I would, I'm not good at like saying every thought I have out loud, even though I'm having the thoughts loudly. But as soon as I read accountable, I thought Z Cypher. As soon as I thought unaccountable, I thought me. This is like, if I was going to put somebody on the exact opposite end of the scale from me on accountability, it's Z Cypher. At least in terms of people I know or people in my audience, people who would listen to this. And this is one of the more interesting factors, right, to me, because I do think it is its own type of intelligence. Like, I think that there's a bunch of these that we tend to view as like moral when they are kind of all, in my mind at least, these are all just like instinctive, right? It's like you just happen to be this way. You happen to be a certain amount of each of these. And you can work on certain ones, but again, everybody is good at certain ones. Everybody's bad at certain ones, and it's not all bad to be, you know, like, it doesn't make you a bad person that you're slow. It doesn't make you a bad person even that you are unaccountable. You know, I hope it doesn't make me a bad person, that I'm not very accountable. But it's just like, I'm not good at taking account for myself. I'm not good at remembering what I was just doing. I'm not good at keeping track of time. I'm not good at keeping track of finances. I'm not good at like tracking my own movement. I'm not good at showing my work. I used to get in trouble in math, you know, for not, like, I would literally just write the answer, because once I had done it in my head, I would forget how I had done it, you know, and then I wouldn't want to have to recreate it. I don't want to have to account for it, you know? So it's something that, like, if I was better at it, it would improve my life. It would improve other people's lives for me to be more accountable. It would get me more respect. So, like, it's probably worth working on. But through this, I want to express how it is possible that, like, I can be a like intelligent person in all these ways and still completely fail at this aspect, because it is its own thing. You know, each of these is really its own thing. Some of them are interconnected. We will get to some that we'll probably cross off because they're too close to other ones we've already done. But I'm not very accountable. I've seen people who never show up to work on time and they don't get fired, which, funnily enough, when it comes to that, I am always on time, but that's because I'm very time conscious, and timely is on here. I'm timely. I may not be accountable, but I am timely. Because again, that's like one thing I pay attention to. So, like, I couldn't tell you what I did at the time. I could tell you what time I did it. I could be like, you know, oh, I know I did a live stream at 4 p.m. What did I say on that live stream? I have no idea. You know, I just know that it happened at 4, or that something happened at 4. You know, but what was it? That's the hard part. Okay. Next up, this is another one where my antonym is pretty interesting. Mindful versus unconscious. And you know, we've got this whole meme now of being mindful and demure, you know. And while I feel like that meme's gotten a lot of shit for demure, particularly being like, you know, a feminine trait that's not always good for women, you know, like it can be like, being demure is not always a good thing, especially not now. Now is not the time to be demure culturally, but it is always a good time to be mindful. Mindfulness is great. I am not super mindful, unfortunately. I try. This is something I am working on, to be more mindful. But what do I mean by mindful is literally minding your surroundings, thinking about things outside of yourself, being like, I should do something about that mess over there, or my cat might need to be fed, or I wonder what my friends are doing right now. I'm going to call my mom and make sure she's okay. Mindfulness. It's like you're literally thinking. Consideration might be another word for this. Being considerate. Do I have considerate in here? I don't have considerate in here. So that might be kind of the same thing here as mindful. But I feel like considerate. Do they mean the same thing? What do y'all think? Is considerate a better word? Is considerate versus inconsiderate a better word for mindful versus unconscious? Because I feel like I would use them the same way. Like, just, are you considering other people? Are you mindful of other people? Are you considering your situation? Are you thinking about it? Or are you not? And like, I think that I'm always thinking about stuff. I'm always considering something, but what I am considering tends to be like, I don't know. Is it even consider? I guess I don't know. I don't know what I consider the word considering to mean, or the word mindful to mean. We're going to stick with mindful. We'll stick with mindful because considerate makes me feel like it doesn't necessarily apply only exteriorly. Like, I don't think that thinking about yourself or making considerations about yourself would be considered mindful, but it can still be considered consideration. Conscious and deliberate are, like that's the main reason that mindful feels like it might not work, is that it can just mean deliberate. Whereas considerate usually means like I'm considering your, I'm being considerate of you. I don't know. I think I'm going to stick with mindful for now. But I expect all of these to be debated hotly into the future. Because when I did neurotyping, most of what the discussion ended up being was like about what words would be used, which I thought was like the least interesting part. But this allows us to actually narrow in on words as the focus. It's like, what are the words we're using? What do they mean? What are their opposites? What do we want to be? Or how do we categorize ourselves, and what's different about us from other people? Because none of us are wholly dumb. Again, there's no way you're dumb in all of the ways here. There's just no possible way. I don't believe it. Okay. Now this next one, I haven't decided if this belongs, because a lot of these I see as like I'm comparing something that is overall like even if I say that being slow isn't like a bad, like it doesn't make you a bad person, or it isn't always a bad thing in all scenarios, like I do think that being overall fast will benefit you more often than being slow will, right? Probably, if it's in combination with everything else. But on the other hand, I have here intense versus lax. And I think being intense is like definitely not always good, but it is very good to be able to tap into. Like if you can't get intense, then that can be a problem, or if this is one where it's like, you really don't want to be too much one or the other. You don't want to be too intense. You don't want to be too lax, but being able to tap into both feels like a good thing, Does slow correlate with being clumsy? Not exactly. I would say that falls in with graciousness as well. Like it's a combination, right? Because you can be slow like you can be slow, but not. You can be deliberate, like you can be slow because you're really taking your time to do every single thing correctly, and that's not, you only become clumsy if you speed up and then you do it wrong. So I would say that, if you have both speed and grace, that is super not clumsy. If you lack both speed and grace, that is definitely going to result in clumsiness. um but I don't know if clumsiness has like a one word antonym that I would put up here besides gracefulness, that like specifically, defines it. I would just put clumsiness as another word for ungraceful in this case. All right. So again, intense and lax, I don't think either one is necessarily the right way to be. I think it's more like you want both. But you can definitely measure it in people. I am more intense than most people, I think. I'm also maybe more lax than most. No, that can't be right. I can't be both. Maybe I can be both. I don't know. I feel like I switch between being either like unnaturally relaxed or unnaturally intense. Um and the closest thing I have to the middle is when I'm doing a show like this. This is like me at the most middling intensity. Uh okay. This is an interesting one though. Compelled versus withheld. Because again, this is some like with a lot of these, we want to look at these like we have control over them, right? Like that you could be more sensitive or more sensational or more reasonable, and I do think you can work on all of these properties. But there's also a an extent to which it just you naturally are sensitive, you naturally are understanding, you naturally are reasonable. And I think that you can be naturally compelled. And it's not just in specific circumstances, but like some people are more compelled than others. You know who is super compelled? Like the most compelled ever? That one Lucario fan. That one Lucario fan is constantly compelled. And by that, I mean Lucario like sees something and is immediately reactive, like immediately types a whole lot of words or immediately has like an idea or like something that they're going to do with it. So like that is being hyper compelled, whereas being very withheld would mean that you are kind of like almost rejecting that. Like you see something and you decide not to care or not to react. And I know people who are like this too, who everything has to be like everything has to be rejected. um I think sometimes it's something they're doing. Like I think my mom is somebody who withholds herself a lot because she is easily compelled and she doesn't want to be compelled by the wrong thing. Like she's worried that if she gets compelled or lets herself be compelled and then it turns out that it wasn't as compelling as she first thought, then she's going to be upset. So she will withhold herself a lot more than I will. I'm a very compelled person as well. I want to be compelled, and so I make that cycle continue. I wouldn't say I'm as extreme as Luca, but I'm on that same above average like level of I see something, I want to do something. So being compelled is something that I would consider it one of my stronger traits, is that I am always wanting to do more as opposed to pulling back. Okay, this kind of ties into that. Curious versus incurious. And this is somewhere that using my mom as an example again, even though y'all don't know her, but she's not very curious. And this, actually, both of my parents are just, my dad's more curious, but his curiosity is, it comes and goes, like sometimes he just suddenly becomes curious about something and investigates it. Other times he's just kind of, like, oh, that has nothing to do with me, so I don't care. My mom is deeply incurious, in my opinion. She never looks into anything. She always tries to figure it out by herself. And I never realized the problematic factor of that until I started recognizing a lot of these habits in myself where I think I'm a pretty curious person. I love information. I'm always looking into new information, right? So I would consider this to be one of the places me and my mom divert the most heavily, is that I always want to know just for the sake of knowing. I just like to know shit. I listen to interviews all the time with creators that I've never read their work or seen their work, and I might look into the work because of it, but I don't need to already be invested in something to want to know about it. I want to know about it because it exists. Like that mountain, like or that saying, why do you climb the mountain? Because it's there. Like, that's me. I see the mountain, I go, I want to know what's up the mountain. That's curiosity. A lack of curiosity is, it's a mountain. I know what's on a mountain. That's my mom. You've seen one mountain, you've seen them all. That's incuriosity. And I think that it's easy to underestimate how much a lack of curiosity makes you less personable, because everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be recognized. Everybody wants to be known for who they are. And if they have a sense that you don't care, you're not curious, you're not investigating, then they just think, oh, you don't care about me. Like, you don't want to see me, because if you did want to see me, you'd be looking, And it's interesting because like my mom gets that part, like, she loves to be seen. She loves to be like, she wants people to be curious about her. You don't have to be curious. She'll tell you, but she will not exhibit that curiosity towards someone else unless you were like really like asking, like, you have to literally beg, to be like, hey, will you listen to me talk about myself right now and this thing I want to tell you about? And also, will you be quiet? No, I see you're starting to, you have to stay quiet for like 10, 15, lack of curiosity. Okay. Next up, I have prudent versus imprudent. This is another one where I'm going to get the exact definition, because I know I used this: acting with or showing care and thought for the future. So to be prudent means that you are considering future implications of what you're doing. And to be imprudent means not doing that. This is a place where I feel I am below where I should be. I think that I have a real struggle to understand what is going to happen in the future, because I am too focused on the chaos of all the things that change and not enough on what aspects remain consistent across time. Like, I'm expecting too much change, so it's hard for me to be prudent because I don't think the future is going to be there. Like, I don't think I can prepare for a future and then that future transpires, But it tends to be that if you are trying to make a certain future transpire, then even if you don't get it, you'll get something closer to it. Whereas if you're not trying at all to do anything, you've just got no clue what the future's going to be. So I am lacking in this prudence of like actively trying to say, oh, well, the future's going to be this because I say so, and I'm going to act towards making it that way. There are certain things that I do in prudence, like certain things I do thinking, okay, I'm going to see the effect of this later, like sowing seeds, type shit. Not literally, but I have sown seeds culturally. I don't do it nearly as much as I should. Being prudent. Thank you, Gary. Always, yes. Dear Future is a song about me recognizing in myself the lack of prudence, recognizing, oh, I don't know how to protect the future, and I want to, I want to be able to protect. I want the future to be good, but what the fuck do I have to do? Like, what do I have to do? What would be prudent? That's what that song is like. Tell me Dear Future, tell me what I have to do to be prudent. That is what the song is asking. So yeah, I would say I fall short on the prudence scale. Next up, judicious versus impartial. And this is another one where I don't know if it's always a good thing to be more judicious than to be more impartial. Like, or even like commonly a better thing. But to be judicious is to have, show, or be done with judgment or sense. So I look at it as, I mean, it's basically a nice way of saying judgmental, right? Like, because judgmental sounds negative, but I don't think that's fair, which is me being very judicious. It's funny that like a judge is meant to be impartial, but their job is also to judge. Isn't this kind of a contradiction? Like, isn't to make a judgment to not be impartial? Maybe the idea is that they're impartial until they make the judgment, so it's like an innately like bipolar job. I don't know. But you can be judicious, meaning that you use judgment. And I would say that I would say I'm pretty judicious in that I choose to be impartial a lot. Like I choose impartiality as a matter of like knowing that as a judgment, like I judge the situation and I have decided being impartial is the right way to be. But I'm not impartial as like a natural matter of course. I judge I come in, I think, oh, okay, it would be best for me to be impartial, like I don't think it's natural for me to be impartial most of the time to most things. As evidenced by the fact that I'm such a fucking picky consumer. Like, obviously, I'm passing crazy amounts of judgment on anime when impartial just means fair, like you're not partial to one side or the other. Yeah, I guess, but that would mean that you couldn't make a judge. Like, to me, impartial means like I won't pick. Like in the end, when you make the judgment, you are picking. You are picking a side, like you are deciding a bias. You didn't have a bias, and then you did when you are deciding to have a bias by making a judgment, Again, your judgment can be that I should not judge. Your judgment could be like, I'm going to withhold judgment, but that is a decision as opposed to just simply never judging in the first place, which would be impartial to me, is like, like having no stance on anything that's happening. Like I would think if somebody came up and just like slapped you in the face and you just thought nothing of it, that would be true impartiality. If you come up and slap me and I think that was hot, that's me like making a judgment, I think. Okay. On the subject of impartiality, fair versus unfair. This is, I mean, impartial doesn't mean fair. Fair means fair. And unfair is unfair. Some people really care about fairness. Some people really don't. I would say I'm very fair, actually, which is odd because I don't think it's always a good idea to be fair. I would say that I go out of my way to be fair to others in a way that is sometimes unfair to myself, but not by my judgment. Again, I'm being very judicial and I'm being very fair based on my judgments. You can decide whether you think I'm being fair or unfair, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm always judging and I'm always trying to be fair. Whether or not I'm successful, that's up to you, but I think compared to other people, I am both way more judgmental and way more fair. Most people who are judgmental are not fair. They're judgmental and mean, and they don't give grace. And, I am being judgmental. attempting to be graceful. I'm not always graceful, but I attempt to be graceful, and I am at the very least usually successfully fair. You know, I can make it right even if it's not graceful. I can give you a very sloppy form of fairness, if that makes sense. Everybody's still following this? I feel like some of y'all have checked out. I feel like some people have gone quiet, or maybe this has gone too far. Is this still interesting? Because neurotyping was not this difficult to break down. But also, I don't know if this is as sexy as neurotyping, you know, because neurotyping, you get to be like a shadow guardian or like a new type or whatever. And this is just like really normal words for the most part that we all know. But are we really thinking about how we use them? All right, looks like you're all still here. That's good. I need more water personally. So what I'm going to do is put on something real quick. Let's see here. Share screen. My brother Victor has been telling me that I need to promote the Rogue Alien Pet album more because he thinks it's a masterpiece. And I'm like, I don't know if that's true, but it sure was fun to make. And so let's listen to a little bit of it while I go get a drink.
I've been cruising along this life. When I get hungry, I just bite. Take what it takes to stay alive and give it back to all my guys and gals and non-binaries. Whatever God you carry, stash it. That's my gift tonight. Pay for it, make it a fight. When I swipe, I take it all with me. Hands so sticky. How'd I end up with this beat? Can't keep lifting, so we keep shit in house where I make history. Find me at Cumberland Gap in a dress and a sun hat, hiking up and down the pass or in the Prius doing dabs. Find me at Cumberland Gap in a dress and a sun hat, hiking up and down the pass or in the Prius doing dabs. Find me at Cumberland Gap in a dress and a sun hat, hiking up and down the pass or in the Prius doing dabs. Find me at Cumberland Gap in a dress and a sun hat, hiking up and down the pass or in the Prius doing dabs.
Alright, so we're gonna do these. Congratulations. Okay, we can do our best. Here we go. This is what it is. Now we're gonna start it.
Find a little lady in the shade of the park and say, hey Ninja, let's stay till dark. Find a little lady in the shade in the park and say, hey Ninja, let's stay till dark. Find a little lady in the shade in the park and say, hey Ninja, let's stay till dark. Find a little lady in the shade in the park and say, hey Ninja, let's stay till dark. Find me at Cumberland Gap in a dress and a sun hat, hiking up and down the pass or in the Prius doing dirt.
CA Beats for real. Where the good die young, but the greats never die. You listen to one of the greatest right now. What? Lord willing, anyway. It's the trial.
Tetragrammaton with the hammer on, oh it's grammar wrong, clutching stammer jaw. I get the panopticon, bring her up the Ragnarok. Aegis to the slay is dripping from the mall, throw your flannels off. Grab a fit and walk into the labyrinth. Giant split, listen to the pithy shit that others spit. Heard it I mix in, it's Trixie Goldie Witch. At your service with another hit. Malevolent to the opposition, don't relent. Benevolent to my homies, to my benefit. Not heaven sent, it's that deep dark devil shit that marks the skin, spilling the blood within. Obstinate flows for you opulent hoes. Consummate pro with the cavalcade pros. Cattle pride vocabulary, baby, I'm a herder. Thought you heard the word, but I tell you mine is worder. Murder, murder in a big stretch Hummer. Make it a cold ass hot girl summer. In the meat right next to the gutter, I wink and another shot rings in the gutter. Blink twice if you're waiting for a rescue. I'll catch up to the train because today I wore my best shoes. Dancing in the rain and singing slang inside the vestibule. Find me and you're at the festival. My life me circa 1991, and I only just begun starting to have fun. Now I'm on the run right into my future. Join the crew or eat dirt, you loser. Join the crew or eat dirt, you loser. Join the crew or eat dirt, you loser. Join the... Ride that beat like a big dick petite chick, bulging at the belly with my butt split, cup tits grip tightly when I come hit sub rips. Do me while you do me after rum sips, hum this tune while you screw and go harder. Pop her body, little shorty like a martyr. Stop her water getting drippy like a faucet. Slap that ass at the moment she drops it. Blast that brass, sexy sex, I swear. Kiss on my neck, make a fist from my chest. Grip on your shaft, yeah, that dick's the best. Bounce on the balls till they solve my stress. Blast that brass, sexy sex, I swear. Kiss on my neck, make a fist from my chest. Grip on your shaft, yeah, that dick's the best. Bounce with the balls till they solve my stress. Solve my stress, solve my stress. Feel truly blessed that I get the best dick. Solve my stress, solve my stress. Let me just attest that I get the best dick. I lick, I suck, I fuck, I cup the balls and swallow. I'm a real tough back to follow. I can tort, distort, contort, and hold the fort. I'm not tall or short, but I'm small and warped. Walk around in tiny shorts when it's warm and excess tees. Skinny bitch, you can put my knees behind my head. Grind the springs off my bed. Pack a huge cock in the back of my head and solve my stress. Solve my stress. Truly blessed that I get the best dick. Solve my stress. Solve my stress. Let me just attest that I get the best dick. Fuck me when I need it, that it come inside. I got nothing left to hide. Need you all inside. Won't you fuck me when I beg it, that it come inside. Give me thinking hella right when you all inside. Fuck me when I need it, baby, come inside. I got nothing left to hide. Need you all inside. Won't you fuck me when I beg it, daddy, come inside. Give me thinking hella right when you all inside. Blessed with intelligence, that's why.
Nah. All right. What's the name of the previous song? That was Solve My Stress. Or if you meant the one before that, Cavalcade Prose. I'm going to listen to one more while I digest real quick.
I live without limits, and when I spit, you listen in to hear the lessons said within my manic bits of inspiration. Guide the stations and the pens, pins and needles in my skin, and driven stakes through both my hands. I never was and no will never ever be the man. I'm a super villain killer, cleverly concealing plans. I'm the evil voice inside your head that wants you to advance. Realize all of your friends are dead as you exit the trance. I've never had an advance or a budget, but I've got a huge catalog because fuck it, I can rap better broke than you can with money. I'm the fucking bee, they come to me to get the honey. Funny how I body everyone on every track. I feature creature from the Black Lagoon with a boxing goon and a Bluetooth speaker. Double feature with my other personality. Finish him as far as the fatality. She's a devout rhyme slanter. She bout the banter. No account for candor. No amount of slander could be daunting to the dancer. Prancer in the fields wearing zero shields. Heroine revealed. Bruce Banana Peel questions what you feel. Are you really real? Are you really real? I believe in some of us, I'm not so sure about the others. If I'm feeling smothered, cut through them like butter. I'm a hot-ass knife, right with a list of druthers. You do not class highly enough to call me mother, but you still just a baby. Need help, then call me maybe. Sleep well and skip the gravy. This the honey. This the honey.
All right. Don't need the screen anymore. Okay. Bringo. Where were we? Fair or unfair? What about careful versus careless? I feel like this one's pretty self-explanatory, right? Like, do you take care in matters or do you not? Do you just fucking go for it carelessly? Literally, how much do you care? I think I'm pretty careful. I think the fact that I've only been streaming for the last couple of years because I was so insecure about my ability to be careful was careful in itself. I do take great care to try to do what I'm exactly what I'm trying to do. You know, like I do not approach things carelessly. Almost ever. I was gonna say for the most part, but then I was like, I don't really know what I do carelessly. So I would say care is something I do a lot of. Now this next one, I put cautious versus indiscreet. I did mention earlier that there was something that was kind of like discreet, but I didn't want to put discreet because that, like, discreet or secretive doesn't sound as like positive as cautious, but they all kind of mean the same thing. You know, like to be cautious would lead you to be secretive, but I guess I view that as like a subset. You know, like secretive is just a subset of cautiousness, or discreetness is just a subset of cautiousness. But I don't know how to describe. I mean, I guess incautious is a word, but indiscreet just sounds like a better, a better other one. Like you just aren't being cautious at all. But yeah, to be cautious, basically the difference between careful and cautious in this case, because these are another two words that get used similarly a lot. But to be careful literally means to put in care. You can be careful without necessarily being cautious. You can be cautious without necessarily being careful. They are similar. You will often be both, but I think you can exercise caution towards something without, like, you can exercise caution towards something else through the form of care for yourself. Like you can be caring about yourself by cautiously not caring about something else, if that makes sense. Isn't an indiscretion like an infraction, or it describes a single action? I do believe an indiscretion is that, but to be indiscreet would mean to not be secretive. Just in general, you're not like keeping anything close to the chest. I do think if there is, if incautious is a word, that's probably the better word. I don't know if it is a word, or if it's not, we can just make it one. So whatever. We're just gonna put. I don't know if it's uncautious or incautious, but we'll just say cautious versus incautious. But yeah, it's just like, again, you can do something cautiously but without care, or carefully but without caution, even though they are things that often mean the same thing. Being careful, being cautious, often the same. But oh yeah, reckless. Why didn't I think of that? Obvious. Thank you. This is why I had to do this live, because I knew that if I tried to do this by myself, I was not going to be able to come up with all the words I want, or figure out which words need to be deleted. I don't think so far we've come across anything that is too redundant, but let me know if you feel like something is too redundant. Again, I expect everyone to probably think about this more afterwards, and come back to me later with comments and such. Oh, but you know what? I have reckless as the opposite of circumspect, which is my next one. Well, maybe these are redundant then. Hold on. Let me find out what is the exact definition of circumspect here. Wary and unwilling to take risks. Okay, yeah, that's too similar to cautious. Forget that. We're taking that off. All right, so it's cautious versus reckless. We don't need circumspect. They're not different enough. And then I have safe versus unsafe. And this is another one where I'm not really sure. I don't know if safe is like too broad. Like, does safe just mean being a bunch of these other things? Or is safe its own thing? Like, are you, because I do think some people provide a feeling of safety just innately, but I don't know if that's the same thing as being safe. If like feeling safe means being safe per se. Safe versus brave. Interesting. Well, I don't mean safe as in you yourself are living in safety. I mean that you are safe for other people to be around. Like safe as in if people are around you, they feel as though they are, well, not even that they feel, that they are literally safe. Like, are you safe? Are you a danger? You know, maybe dangerous would be the better opposite word here, than unsafe. Yeah, let's put safe versus dangerous. We'll make it a little more clear what I'm trying to say here. Safe from what? I mean, danger. Are you safe? Do you provide safety or do you provide danger? You could be cunning and dangerous. Well, sure, you can be any of these things and any of the other. You can be toxic and sensitive. You know, you could be any of the negatives and any of the positives. That's kind of the point of this, is that you can be real. You can be super safe and not super thoughtful, but you can't be super dangerous and super safe. You can't be both. So the only thing that unqualifies you from one end of one of these is the other end. You have to be somewhere between fair and unfair. You have to be somewhere between safe and dangerous. Safe from your actions? Yes. That's more or less what I mean, I think. There's so many ways to be unsafe. Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ways to be any of this. I don't see how this one's different in that specific way. I'm more thinking, like, does something else on this list already mean safe? Or is being safe just being all of the other things? Or is safety its own specific, like, because I think people try to create safety. I just don't know if you can do it without all the other traits. Like, I don't know if you can be safe without also being something else here, you know? Like, but then that makes it kind of like being sagacious, right? Where, like, you can't just be sagacious because being sagacious is being everything. So in that same way, is being safe like more of an umbrella that, like, if you are in fact thoughtful, vigilant, observant, calculating, you are likely to be safe, you know? Combined with empathetic, like, I think safety is a combination of like 12 different of these, but you need all 12. You know, like, you can't have any just one. So it can't be taken off because it is categorically it is a thing, but you need a bunch of them to be it. You know? I'm going to put a circle around it like with sagacious, where, like, this is one of the target. Like, if you want to be beloved within a society, like, let's say that the target of this chart is like, how do I be loved by my village the most? Like, if I have 100 people who know me, how do I be loved by the most of them I possibly could? Having these traits, and I think that the biggest ones, like, so far, are safety and sagacity. Like, if you make people feel safe, and one of the ways you can do that is through sagacity, but, like, if you seem like you know what you're talking about and you're safe, you're the king, you know? Like, if you're sagacious and safe is like a great combination, I think. When you think safe, you think of physical safety from one's actions from danger. Yeah, that's like, if I think, I mean, my image of safety, like, Bird to me is safe in the sense that he does not try to be unsafe, except for in very rare occasions towards people that he thinks are unsafe. You know, like, there are people who are going out to. My cousin Boyd used to tell me a story about a coworker of his who would tell him stories about going out and literally, like, roofing women, or, like, you know, like you know, drugging them in order to get them into bed. And he would say things like, you got to lure them in with the Marvin Gaye and then throw on the DMX. That's an unsafe person. That is a categorically unsafe person. categorically unsafe. So, you know, that's the far end extreme of dangerous, of just actively dangerous. Diddy, dangerous. You know, just a dangerous guy, not at all safe. And there are people who I think can project an image of being safe because, like, Diddy probably told lots of people, my money will keep you safe. His money is what put you in danger in the first place. You weren't in danger until you came in contact with Diddy's money, you know? Like, so in that sense, I think I'm decently safe in the sense that I'm not trying to cause problems, but I'm dangerous because of, remember way back when we talked about accountability. Accountability plays a huge role in safety. Because if you do things like, oh, I don't know, start boiling water, walk away from the stove, and forget about it for an hour, that's you not being accountable to your own actions in a way that is very unsafe. So that's why I don't get to be safe. This is something I have to work on. Even though I might be somewhat cautious, I'm not accountable. So I might be trying to be cautious, but if I don't know what I'm trying to be cautious about, I'm not safe. So this is why, again, safety involves a bunch of things. You have to be accountable and cautious and careful and fair and judicious to be safe, you know. Oh, that took us down some dark paths talking about safety. I put thoughtful versus unthoughtful, but that's the same thing as mindful, right? Versus unconscious. Thoughtful versus unthoughtful. That can't be different. I like mindful more because thoughtful just means you're having thoughts at all. And while there are people who don't have any thoughts, I think being mindful just sounds like like a more positive sounding version of the word thoughtful, right? Wise and naive. I believe we will get to that. I know naive is in here. I don't remember exactly what is the opposite. Okay, yeah. It's in, because wise kind of plays into sagacious, right? Where it's like wise is kind of the culmination of everything. All of this leads to wisdom. I don't really know how to describe wisdom as an individual trait apart from the other traits, but I do have shrewdness as the opposite of naivety. So we'll get to that. But thoughtful, I don't think is different enough from mindful. Mindful to mean present. Actually, presence should be in here. Presence versus absence, we'll say. Because it's similar to accountability, but not exactly. Both of them are things I struggle with, like maintaining presence and maintaining accountability. That's like when I talk about being dissociative, these are the symptoms. Is the lacking, like, just not like the struggle to maintain presence and accountability is the symptomatic of my dissociation. But so I'll add that in. Yeah, presence in this case meaning like your ability to maintain association to the present moment, to be doing what you are doing, not thinking about other shit, not halfway in, halfway out or whatever, fully present. I don't even think that I'm fully present right now because so much of my mind is in this that it's not in my body. So like, I'm not thinking about how much pain I'm creating in my shoulders because I'm dedicating myself to this. But when my presence returns to me and I start feeling my body again, I'm immediately just going to be like, I'm just going to want to do nothing but stretch and attend to my shoulders because they're just going to be stiff as fuck. So that to me is like, there's like a light lack of presence even now, as I'm being pretty fucking present to be able to do this, literally a presentation, I still don't feel I'm as present as I could be. Because being fully present would be like being Doechii in her Grammy performance. Like, that's a level of you have to be all the way there, you know, like so present that there's nothing else but the present. You know, there's not one single iota of past or future interrupting your present. Yeah, okay. So we added presence, but we're going to take off thoughtful versus unthoughtful because I think it's too similar to mindful, and wisdom is too similar to sagacity. I don't really know how to put wisdom in without it crossing too many other paths. But here we've got another new one. Vigilant versus heedless. So vigilance, in my mind, is like basically staying woke. You know, like how much do you remind yourself of what's going on? You know, I think a lot of people view like watching the news as an act of vigilance. I'm here to tell you that the news preys on your desire for vigilance to make you actively not see what's going on, heedless, to make you heedless, you know. But people are taking heed. They are taking heed of the wrong things, you know. So again, it's not that you're always being correctly vigilant, but are you trying? Is it something you're trying to do, is to remain vigilant? I'm not super vigilant. I will pop my head up and see what's going on, and then I'll go back underground for a long time, you know. When I think hypervigilance, I think of people who like cannot sleep because they are so embattled. In the Rurouni Kenshin OVA, there's this part where Kenshin is like sleeping, sitting up, holding his sword, and Tomoe comes into the room, and I think she's trying to like, she wants to set the sword aside because she's thinking, oh, he's asleep. Let me take his sword away from him. And of course, you know, as soon as she gets close, he springs up and like has the sword open at her throat type shit. And he's like, oh, some bitch, you know, and puts the sword away. And it's like, that's hypervigilance. That's, I cannot stop being aware of everything going on because of, you know, trauma. I am more likely to, you know, take heed when I have to, and then if I feel like I'm fine to not pay attention, other people are paying enough attention for me, not super vigilant. But it's a good trait. Bird is definitely more vigilant than I am. He definitely cares more about trying to understand what's going on consistently, you know, checking in. That's a big part of it. A big part of vigilance is checking in. How often do you check in? You know, I'm not a big check-in person. I would say pretty low vigilance. But apart from vigilance is also, are you observant or unobservant? I feel like we did have one that's kind of similar to this. What, discernment? No, that's not the same. Observant, perceptive. I had perceptive and oblivious. Is observant too similar to perceptive? Can you observe something and not really be perceiving it? I don't think so. I'm going to take out observant. I think it's too similar to perceptive. And unobservant is the same thing as oblivious. So, yeah. Forget about that one. All right. This one's interesting because this is one of those that even though it is a positive trait in the sense that, like, if you have this trait, it will benefit you and people who you're working for, it is also often described negatively. But that is calculating versus rash. And I think this falls somewhat into the realm of careful and cautious, but it's like it's another step forward from that. You know, like being careful and cautious might not mean you actually do anything. You're just like avoiding things. Whereas calculating is like, I'm making a plan. You know, I'm going to figure out what's happening. This also plays into prudence. Prudence is like trying to figure out what the future is going to be, and calculating is similar to that. But I think it's more specific in that there's like an element of data, like analysis to this, right? Like calculation. Because prudence can be like just kind of, let me do things now that I think will benefit me later. Calculation is like, I'm going to figure out specifically what I can do to get a specific result, Whereas being rash is like just fucking not at all concerned about those types of consequences. You're just going in and doing whatever seems right to you in the moment. Being rash is also being imprudent, but I think it's more proactive. Like to be not thinking about the future could be imprudent, but not rash. To be rash is like making decisions that have consequences you're just not considering. Okay, so no, the next one I have is another repeat, I think. Regardful versus regardless. I mean, that's funny to describe a person as being regardless. But I think that's too similar to, again, mindfulness. Like to regard something is to be mindful of it. So I'm taking that out. But next we've got shrewd versus naive. And shrewd, let's see exactly what we have for a definition of shrewd here, because I remember being intrigued by the definition. Having or showing sharp powers of judgment or astute. So is being shrewd the same thing as being judicious in this case? / judgmental? Because I have it as the opposite of naive in this case. Like, I would think of shrewd as like being very capable of getting... Well, maybe it's too similar to calculating, actually. Like, being shrewd is somewhere between being judicious and calculating, I feel like. It could be that it's another kind of a superset, kind of like being safe, where it's like a collection of traits. You know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to put a circle around this, because I kind of feel like in the end I'm going to be able to categorize these where it's going to be like certain traits when combined make safe, certain traits when combined make shrewd, and like safe and shrewd combined makes sagacious. There might be a third, but I'm just saying, like, I think it might be that these two are supersets and this is like the ultimate superset. But I do think that shrewd is its own thing. It's just a combination of multiple other things. For instance, one of those things, and this is another one that I'm not sure if this is too circumstantial, savvy versus inexperienced. So like to have savvy is literally to have experience in something. Now, when you have savvy, you only have it in a specific thing, but that doesn't mean that you don't just broadly, like you could say, I have savvy. I have anime savvy. I have writing savvy. Like I have. It's not that I have savvy for everything all the time, but I do have savvy as opposed to having inexperience. If I was just purely inexperienced, it means I don't have experience in anything. You could be inexperienced in specific things or savvy in specific things. But I think as long as you have some savvy, that's a good thing. There are definitely people who have like a ton of savviness either in one category or in a bunch of categories, whereas, other people don't have a ton. I definitely have a lot of writing savvy, and a lot of I would say creative, just in general. I have a lot of creative savvy in the arts, creative arts, not in creative, like, I can't build shit, but I have a lot of, artistic creative savvy. There are plenty of things I'm inexperienced in. So would I put myself at like a high level of general savviness? Probably not. I don't think I feel like I've met people who are more of like a jack of all trades, and by that I don't mean they are like kind of shitty at a bunch of things. I mean they're like legitimately great at a bunch of things, you know, like JPEG Mafia. That's a guy with tons of savvy because he knows how to do every part of the job. You know, like he's not just an incredibly savvy producer. He's an incredibly savvy rapper, lyricist, performer, you know, arranger, like fucking technician. Like he could just do all kinds of shit because he's really good at gaining technical knowledge like that, you know? So we'll call that savvy. But then there's also, separately from savvy, a word that I didn't even know what this word meant until I was making this list, moxie. Because moxie is similar to savvy, but I'm going to break this down where savvy is like technical know-how and moxie is experience. Because you can understand things and not really know technically. Like I would actually say I've got more moxie than savvy when it comes to the arts, right? Like because let's say that like visual arts, for instance, like I can't draw. I have no technical savvy in the art in the visual arts, but I can describe drawings as though I knew what I was talking about because I've got a lot of experience with looking at them, you know? So like I feel like I have a certain amount of moxie in places that I don't have savvy. And, you know, I guess I would put my overall moxiness level above my overall savviness level. Like, I feel like I have enough experience just being on Earth and being alive, you know, that I have experience in lots of random little places, and not a ton of it, but enough to have some familiarity, so that when people are telling me things, I feel like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with that, you know. This kind of plays into just perspective in general. Like I would say that having a lot of moxie and savvy is a big part of sagaciousness. But I don't think I wrote perspective just by itself on here. So yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll say moxie is our word for like having lots of perspective into different things, just being familiar. Okay. Actually, my next one is too similar to savvy. I had proficient versus incompetent, but that's the same thing as savviness versus inexperience, pretty much. Incompetent is a little more broad, but it's actually too broad. You can all the negative ones are incompetence in their own way. Okay, this one is super interesting to me though, because this is a word that so far everything we have is very inward, where it's like things that are between you and whoever you're talking to, or you and yourself. But this is like a way of interacting with like the world exclusively. This doesn't exist without the outside. And what I'm talking about is being literate versus illiterate. And when I say literate, I don't just mean literate as in you can literally read words, like you can tell what the words say, but also that you know what they mean. This right here that I'm doing is the most literate thing it could be. I would put myself on a pretty high literacy level. Now, I'm not hyper literate because I don't read that much. And people who read a lot, the stuff they're reading is way above my level. Like way the fuck above my level. So I would say I'm well above average literate, but nowhere near hyper literate. I'm like somewhere in that top, 20% of maybe even probably top 10% of literacy, but nowhere near the top 5% of literacy. It's, like a huge gap there. But nonetheless, I'm very literate. And I think of literacy similar to being analytical, but it's more about like how well do you understand words? Just do you get words? When people use words, do you get them? Do you get what they're saying specifically through words? As opposed to any other medium. because all the rest of this can be done without words. Words didn't have to exist for you to be sensitive. Words didn't have to exist for you to be fast or graceful. Words did not have to exist for you to be mindful, accountable, careful, cautious, or vigilant. Words, you have to be literate to understand words. So we're going to say that that's its own category. How well do you work with words? All right, next up, analytical versus irrational. And this was one that was fun for me to write down, because when I wrote down irrational as the opposite of analytical, it made me feel like, wow, the thing that I've chosen as like my representative thing that I'm good at, everyone who's not good at it, I'm calling irrational. But basically, yeah, like to be analytical, I mean, it's similar to curiosity, but you can be curious about something but not necessarily analytical in your approach to realizing that like, let's say that you're curious why something happened, so you go to a spirit medium. What she does, she might call it analysis, but I don't know, like to me, being analytical means applying rationale, right? And we already talked about being reasonable, which is a means by which you can be analytical. But again, you can try to reason with something and not really use logic. I think being analytical is essentially being logical, but it's more so using logic to decode what's happening. What is the rationale? Like, you're trying to find the rationale. You're looking for rationale. So if you're not looking for rationale, you're being irrational. You just don't care. You're like, I do not care about the rationale. I'm not analyzing my own behavior. I'm not analyzing anyone else's behavior. I don't care about why. Analytical basically just means, do you ask why? Like, not just what. Curious is like, do you ask what? Analytical is like, do you ask why? Those are my two favorite words. I know that because I've seen videos of me as a kid, and they're almost the only two words I say. People say something to me, and I go, what? And they say it again, and I go, why? Still a lot of interactions that I have. All right. Okay. Now this next one, I don't know if this one's real. This one might be a superset, or it might be that it was already encompassed with other things. You tell me. I have just easy versus difficult. And I don't know, it's not always a good thing to be easy or difficult. Let's see, what else? Because being easy, I do feel like being easy to deal with just means being all this other stuff, right? Like, if you're reasonable, if you're empathetic, although you don't really have to be fast or witty to be easy. In fact, those things can make you more difficult if somebody is not fast or witty. So that kind of makes, easiness, I think a lot of it, like if you're very conscientious, you can make yourself easy, but some people are easy without trying. They're not being conscientious about it, So, which, by the way, I don't even think conscientious is on this list, but that was the same thing as mindful. Maybe that's what we should use instead of mindful, conscientious. Or did we already go over this? I don't remember. We'll keep mindful. Easy for whom? Easy for just easy to deal with it. Like, overall easy, like more often easy than not, right? Like, okay, my cousin Evan, who set himself on fire, he was not easy. And there were a lot of reasons he was not easy. You know, like my aunt thought it was because he's autistic. Well, I know a lot of fucking autistic people who are not that difficult. There was a lot more than being autistic. He was not sensitive. He was not brilliant. He was not understanding. He was not reasonable. He was not empathetic. He was not fast. He was not. You could argue he was trying to be witty. He was not adaptable. He was not perceptive. He was not graceful. He was not merciful. He was not discerning. He was accountable in the sense that he could remember everything that had been said or done. No, that's not even true. Not about himself. He could only remember stuff about like shit he'd read. Not mindful, not curious, not prudent, not judicious, not fair, not care. Wow, I'm really grilling this dead kid. Sorry, Evan, you really were difficult. Like, that is why he killed himself. He was a difficult person. I'm fairly difficult for a lot of people. But I make myself easy by not being around people. So in that sense, maybe I'm more easy than difficult because I don't make myself a problem for anyone. Or I try to, at least I am through effort minimizing the amount of difficult I am for people I would be difficult for, you know? But I think I'm overall pretty easy. I don't know. It depends on who you are. I guess if you put me in front of enough people, I think I would become difficult to more people than I would be easy to. But at the same time, again, I'm not trying to make myself difficult. And a lot of people are. A lot of people literally just go around being difficult all the fucking time, you know? Like on purpose, doing it as a thing they're doing. So, yeah, again, this is another one I think is a superset, but I do think it is a thing. Like I in the same way that it's a combination of other things, you know, but it's not the same as being shrewd or safe. So you can like Bird is safe but not easy necessarily. Like he will make himself easy to deal with or difficult to deal with based on what he thinks he can get away with. But like he's not trying to be particularly easy or particularly difficult, you know. Or I should say, he's trying to be easy, but his inclination is to be difficult, and therefore it slips through, you know, more than if he was just easy by inclination, if that makes sense. So overall, he's easy, but it's like a lot of efforts being put towards that. If he was being to his nature, he would be very difficult. A lot of me being easy is because it is my nature to be easy, and a lot of me being difficult is because I don't think that my nature gets things done, you know? So in that way, we're on opposite ends of the, you know, I'm like easy and trying to be difficult. He's like difficult and trying to be easy. And I think that might be why we understand each other so well. Because I'll be like, I'm difficult. And he's like, no, you're not. And then I'm like, you're easy. And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm having more trouble with the subjective things on the list. Not sure why I came with the expectation that it should be objective. Are the supersets subjective? It's all subjective. I don't know why you would think any of this could be objectively measured in any way, shape, or form. How the fuck do you objectively measure any of this? There's no way. It's all comparative. It's all you versus the person next to you. Are you more empathetic or less empathetic than the person next to you? How do you figure that out? Completely subjective. Just like reality and our perception of it. So, anyway. Coherent versus incoherent. I think I fall pretty high on the coherency, but again, this is one of those things where I could be in the top 10%, but nowhere near the top 5. You know, like I'm very coherent to people who are good at understanding. No, I'm coherent to most people. If I'm trying to communicate with the average person, I can figure out what to say. I've never had difficulty where, like, the only times that I seem incoherent is when I'm trying to explain something so ridiculously complicated that most people would never even try, you know? So I think that I'm pretty solidly coherent. I know plenty of incoherent people. Plenty of incoherent people. So I'm going to put myself in the top layers of coherency. I don't think I'm hard to understand if you're putting in any effort. And I know people who I don't know what the fuck they're trying to say at all, you know. Aristotle had a list exactly like mine, but it's a shorter list. Well, we've made up a lot more words since then, haven't we? Maybe more like internal versus external, inherent versus perceived. I think what you're struggling with is that some of these are things that like you kind of are like born with an amount of it, and then maybe you can change it. And then there's other ones that are like being like nobody's born literate, you know, but like, and it's hard to measure literacy without using other words in here as well. But at the same time, like it's literally how well do you use words? And some people just understand words more easily. You know, like my brother Victor, he is in many of these categories above me, borderline illiterate. Like he cannot find the right word. He just can't. My dad reads a lot of books. I would not put him at a high literacy level because even though he understands the concepts in the books he reads are for people who don't have a super high literacy. You know, like they're all like simplistically written. They're for adults. You know, he loves Malcolm Gladwell. That's like his guy. You know, Malcolm Gladwell is very coherent, not super literate. Whereas like James Joyce, totally incoherent, super literate, you know? So yeah, like some of these, it's like, it feels more like, oh, this is just in your nature, or this is more, like measurable, like this is something that you should be doing on purpose, and some of it's more like situational or incidental or social. But I just think that each one of these can be measured as an aspect of a person that is either strong or weak, you know, like it's, you are either vigilant or heedless, you are either judicious or impartial. And again, it's not like it's not a binary, but it's a scale. You're somewhere on this. You're somewhere between super judicious and super impartial. But the only way we could create these scales is by having somebody at the top and somebody at the bottom. And that just comes down to putting everybody in a row, interviewing them on, you know, whatever traits you consider judiciousness to embody, and then like at the end of the poll we all hold up our results. Like the best we can do is the level of internet personality poll, you know, like MBTI typing, but really complicated, you know. Anyway, this next one is another one that this is going to be one of the hardest ones to quantify there is. So if you're worried about ones that are hard to quantify, this one's really, really going to do you. But I don't, so let's discuss if this is real. All right. Grounded versus afloat. Tell me if there are better words for this. Grounded versus afloat. And like there's a lot that I feel like can be encompassed in afloat, like being superstitious or being paranoid just in general. You know, like being afloat would be like, out of control, out of a sense of control of yourself, like not literally physically out of control necessarily, but like to be grounded, to have your feet planted down, the implication is that you have control over your movement. You know, like you are able to you're walking around the same earth as everybody else. As soon as you start floating, you no longer are controlling how you move. You know, you are now just in you're now at the grace of God, you know. And so I think that the less somebody is grounded, the more they start becoming, again, superstitious, the more they start becoming like I guess superstitious and paranoid is like the best way I can describe what being afloat means, but neither one of those words is complete enough to be by itself. Sounds sort of like openness plus agreeability. Yeah, it's definitely. Now this is another one that might just be like a superset of other things. Because I also think grounded, it plays into being shrewd. It plays into being safe. Maybe it's too similar to sagacious. Maybe being grounded is just being like wise. You know, like, but at the same time, there's a lot of the stuff you you could be safe and not grounded. You could technically be shrewd. I mean, there's plenty of people who are like shrewd business people and they believe in like fucking Scientology, you know? So like that would be somebody who is not grounded but is shrewd. So I would say you could be grounded but not safe, shrewd, or easy. But you do have to be grounded to be sagacious. So I'm going to count it as a fourth inner superset because I don't think you can be grounded without being a bunch of other shit at the same time. So now we've got like our major supersets are like to be grounded involves some element of being like cautious and, you know, like sad, like I don't know, discerning. You know, but you don't have to be grounded to be safe. You don't have to be safe to be shrewd. You don't have to be shrewd to be easy. But you do have to be all of those to be sagacious, which is still the top thing, you know. But each of these, you cannot be safe without being cautious and, you know, like sensitive to some level. Like there's certain things that like safe can't exist by itself. Shrewd can't exist by itself. Easy and grounded can't exist by themselves. So that's the basis of where I'm drawing my circles. Eventually, I'm going to turn this into like a better graph, something that's not just like a horrifying list. But I don't want to do that until there's been more discussion, until the floor's been open to more people to find out if we're missing words or if we have too many words and all that kind of shit. Like, for instance, my next one, empirical versus speculative, I feel like we've kind of covered that, right? Did we? Analytical versus irrational. Yeah, that's the same thing. Analytical and irrational versus empirical. Yeah, that's the same thing. Okay, this next one I think is maybe its own thing. I've got genuine versus ingenuine. Maybe disingenuous is the word I want. I don't know. To be genuine, to be, I don't want to just say honest because honesty implies that you are literally telling the exact truth. And I don't really believe that the exact truth is real. I think that you know, honesty with a capital H is not necessarily possible, but being genuine is what we mean by that. You know, like you're being honest to your intentions is to be genuine. And I think you can be genuine with yourself and not with others. but I don't know how genuine you like. I feel like somebody who is at that, like, who is at the maximum level of genuineness would be that way all the time, you know? You don't believe in this one? All right. Is this about genuineness? What do you think is missing with this? Because I feel like there's definitely people who are just disingenuous, like who just don't want to be honest, not with themselves, not with anybody else. They're just disingenuous. And then there's people who, at the very least, are saying what they think they mean, you know, like all the time. Um, I don't know. I like it. I'm keeping it, but you can let me know if there's a logic by which that shouldn't be. Next, I have astute versus unknowing. I don't know if that really works. Like, that just means you know things, right? Like, know a lot of things. Or like a tendency toward being correct and just having knowledge. I don't know. Can a person be astute, or is that only something that like can a person be overall astute? I'm not sure. Oh, I still have like 10 more of these. I've got available versus unavailable, which that one now I'm also thinking sounds like another one I did already, right? Well, I had accountable, and I had, maybe I don't have one that means this already. Did I not? I guess I don't. I thought I had gone over my unavailability. Oh, I had presence versus absence we added in. Okay. Interesting. They are different actually. Because I would say presence is more your like ability to maintain presence, and availability is more like something you can make on or off, like you can decide to be available, you know? Like I can be hyper present for myself and what I'm doing, but unavailable to everybody else, you know? Or I could be available but not totally present. I mean, I guess to be truly available would probably involve offering presence. But I also think that you can be present without being available, you know, or available without being present necessarily. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it for now. We can debate this later. This is one that's super interesting to me. And this is like a whole other video I've been planning to make for a long time. Ugh! The next trait I have is this one's gonna upset some of you, I think. Comfortable versus uncomfortable. Now, when I say comfortable, I don't mean like incidentally right now you feel comfortable as compared to how you normally feel. Are you capable of being comforted? I've been thinking about this a lot ever since iDubbbz came up with this thing where he would tell people, you seem like an uncomfortable person. And he was really proud of this, thinking that like this is like this big own. You seem like an uncomfortable person. I'm fascinated by that phrase because I think what he means is you are a person who makes other people uncomfortable. But what makes other people uncomfortable is the fact that you can't be comforted. you seem uncomfortable. And when somebody senses you're uncomfortable, it makes them want to try to comfort you. If you see someone who looks cold and you have a jacket, you think, I should give them that jacket because then they won't be uncomfortable. But if somebody can't be comforted, that makes you uncomfortable because they are uncomfortable. So an uncomfortable person, it goes beyond that. It goes beyond the way you're reacting to them. It goes to the way that they just are. They can't be comforted. And that is uncomfortable. So how comfortable are you? I think I am. I have difficulty with this one. I would say I'm an uncomfortable person. I've even thought about making a shirt that just says I'm uncomfortable. I think it would be pretty fun. But I have found comforts. Like I will go out of my way to make myself more comfortable, but I feel like I'm working from a baseline of like tremendous discomfort. Like right now, I'm wearing like layers of clothes, right? And I've got like kind of long hair on my arm. Maybe it doesn't look that long to you compared to like what like hair on your arm normally looks like. But like the shower doesn't stay hot enough long enough for me to like shave my whole body every time. So I've been like struggling to find time to when am I going to shave all this? This makes me tremendously uncomfortable. Like seeing it, perceiving it, feeling it, anything about it, it makes me want to tear my skin off. Like it just makes me want to pull the skin off my body. And so in light of that, in order to make myself comfortable, I take estrogen, and although I'm out right now, and I get high and drunk and do things that are fun for myself and try not to be uncomfortable. But it's difficult. I'm usually uncomfortable. Like I feel fairly comfortable right now, but I think it's because I'm so deep in my bag on something that I think is like kind of brilliant. So like, this is a comfort to me in the moment, but I'm just going to go back to being uncomfortable as soon as this is over. And I'm somewhat uncomfortable actually right now just because like my back's starting to hurt and my mouth is starting to hurt from speaking too much. So I got to wrap this up before it gets too uncomfortable. But yeah, that's what I mean by comfortable. Now I also have here comforting / foreboding. Just because you're uncomfortable doesn't mean you can't be comfortable to somebody else. And I know I said that like what iDubbbz is saying is like your uncomfortability makes you uncomfortable to me. But I actually think these are two different things. I think somebody can be uncomfortable themselves and still be comforting to someone else. So if iDubbbz really means you are uncomforting, that's what he should be saying. I think the you are uncomfortable and therefore uncomforting thing is interesting, but it's not an absolute. Being uncomfortable doesn't automatically make you uncomforting. I am more uncomfortable than I am uncomforting. People don't usually tell me that my presence makes them uncomfortable. Sometimes I can tell, especially if it's religious people or something who don't like the way I look. People are uncomfortable with the way I'm dressed or whatever. Like that's me being uncomforting. But would I put myself overall in the category of foreboding? Yes, actually, because of the way that people talk about me on the internet. The way that my own fans and people who want to be friends with me talk about me makes me sound insanely foreboding. I'm not trying to be foreboding. I suspect that being so uncomfortable makes me less comforting. It seems like I've become way more comforting over time. I haven't really gotten more comfortable. I've just gotten more comforting. I've gotten better at that, but I've gotten a little more comfortable. That's not fair. I have gotten more comfortable and more comforting, but I would still say that I'm pretty low on both of those. Pretty low on the comfortability spectrum, in my opinion. I might be more like, I'm probably the most comforting doing this that I ever am. You know, like this is me trying to be comforting, but like even then I slip so much uncomfortable shit into my videos. For a lot of people, thinking about yourself is uncomfortable. This whole exercise is either a great comfort or a great discomfort to you, probably. Okay. Next I have, and this is, again, some of these words are so similar to one another that the fact that I even am like, well, okay, but they are different words for a reason, you know. Manageable versus unmanageable. How easily can you be managed? And this is another one where you might be thinking, well, like, aren't there a bunch of other traits that play into how manageable you are? And like, maybe, but I do think it is a specific thing, right? Because some people have what is called oppositional defiance disorder, where when somebody tells you to do something, you instinctively do the opposite of that. Now, that doesn't make you unmanageable in and of itself if you decide to manage it. Bird has this problem. If you tell Bird to do something, his instinct is to do the opposite. He's hyper aware he has this problem, so he goes out of his way to think, okay, well, you might be thinking you want to do the opposite, but you need to do the opposite of the opposite. You know, like you have to be, you know, unmanageable to your unmanageability, if that makes sense. So Bird is super manageable. And what I mean by that is if you tell him what to do, he will do it perfectly. He is the easiest person he's the best employee you could possibly have, is what I'm trying to say. Like, no employer doesn't like having Bird because he's manageable. I am not nearly as manageable because I'm not very accountable or present. And those are important things, or cautious or vigilant. Those are all important things towards manageability. I'm more manageable than a lot of people. I wouldn't say I'm above average or below average. I would say I'm an average level of manageable. Maybe the things that make me harder to manage are different from most people. You know, most people, you're not really struggling so much with. Well, that's not true. A lot of people are unaccountable and fucking whatever. The point is that I'm not as manageable as Bird is. This one I'm not sure about. This next one I'm not sure about. Curative versus toxic. I'm not sure if this is real. I mean, this is just the same thing as safe and dangerous, right? Yeah, that's too similar to safe and dangerous. Safe and dangerous makes more sense. I don't think a person. I mean, your presence can be curative, but it's so circumstantial. I think being safe is more of a thing than that. Okay, but being creative versus being uncreative, and this is one where, like, it's hard to be creative without any of the other stuff. But you can create. I mean, you don't necessarily need any of the other stuff to create. You know, creating doesn't mean being good at creating. It just means creating. Are you creative or are you uncreative? Do you create or do you not create? I am super fucking creative. I can't stop making shit. Is it all good? No. But I would say that I am ridiculously creative. An uncreative person would be somebody who just never makes anything. Doesn't say much, doesn't make much. My dad, not creative. Doesn't really, I mean, he made people. He made 3 people. That was pretty creative of him. I've never seen him draw anything. I've never seen him write anything. No, that's not true. He wrote poems. My dad wrote a poetry book in his early 30s, and it was pretty influential on me because I was so surprised that he did it. Because I had not thought of my dad as a creative person at all until he created that book. impulsivity, I feel like, falls under being compelled. Because I don't think being impulsive is necessarily like always a positive, but being compelled is means that you are impulsed to do things. I don't know. Is impulsive its own thing? What is the opposite of impulsive? Prudent or cautious. Yeah, I've got cautious and careful on here. So impulsive, I've got cautious and the opposite of that as reckless, but I would put impulsive as either a synonym of reckless or of compelled. Like positively, being impulsive is being compelled. Negatively, being impulsive is being reckless. Anyway. So being creative, that's one thing. But a totally different thing is being visionary versus being unimaginative. And even though I am super creative, I am not super visionary. I am brilliant in that the ideas I have are very attention grabbing and unique and therefore draw the eye. But that doesn't mean that they are super visionary, which I would take to mean basically how far away is this from reality? Like how far is the things you imagine from like what currently is? When somebody gets called a visionary, it's usually because they made something real that nobody thought could be real before that. Like if you invented a rocket, that's visionary. If you or the airplane, inventing a new genre of music, would be seen as visionary. I am pretty good at combining things that I've already seen. I wouldn't say I'm very good at like coming up with something that feels totally new, like except in that it is like a bunch of things that are obvious and old combined in a new way. But it's usually not even born out of vision. It's just born out of like experimentation. I'm way more experimental than visionary. Does experimental belong in here? No, that we'll put that under creative. If you create all the time, that's basically experimenting. Right? Well, do you think experimental should be in here separately from creative? What's the opposite of experimental? I guess the opposite of it would be conservative, which I crossed out as the opposite of adaptable. But adaptable doesn't mean experimental. So yeah, we'll put experimental, and the opposite is conservative. There you go. I would definitely call myself highly experimental and not at all conservative. Okay, so I was at visionary versus unimaginative. Yeah, so like I'm probably like I think lots of people have visions that they just don't do anything with. So like I might seem more visionary than some people because I'm more creative, which means that more of my visions come to light. I don't think that I am like especially visionary as much as I am especially creative. I've talked to plenty of people whose visions are way more vivid than mine. They've just never done anything with it, My brother Victor, visionary. He sees things, and then he can bring those things to life or he can describe them, but he clearly sees things all the time. I see things sometimes, usually because I'm trying. I don't just like naturally end up seeing some shit, in my mind's eye that easily. I'm not as like inspired in that sense. Okay. I have written here proficient versus amateurish, but that's the same thing as savvy versus inexperienced. So that's getting crossed out. This next one's important, and I'm surprised it took us so long to get here, but that is the nature of how I am, because the next one is organized versus disorganized. You can probably guess where I would put myself. Heavily in the disorganized category. Organized. Now, you notice I also have orderly versus disorderly as two different things. Because to be organized means that you have things in specific places, which is orderly in a sense, but orderly just means obeying order. Like you want there to be a specific order and you want things to be in accordance to that order. I think that maybe orderly could even be considered like a superset that encompasses organized. You know, like I think you might have to be organized to be orderly, but orderly would also be other things. So maybe it deserves a line around it. Maybe I feel like orderly and easy have a lot in common, but are also not necessarily the same. Yeah, I can't decide if I think orderly deserves to be a superset or not. But I definitely feel like you like if you are orderly, there's a good chance you're also organized. But if you don't necessarily have to be like, I think you can be organized to your own expectations without expecting. I don't know. Are they too similar? Organized environment, orderly actions. That's kind of what I'm thinking, but to organize is to create order, right? Like that there like what makes it organization is that it is ordained to be that way, right? Like can you organize something without order? Let's take out organized and disorganized and just have orderly versus disorderly. I think organized is encompassed in orderly, and I would have made orderly a superset, but I don't think there's anything else that's required. Like I don't think you are required to be creative to be orderly or available necessarily to be orderly. Like orderly just means you're following a certain set of orders, and to organize something means to put it into an order. So we're just going to go with orderly versus disorderly, and organized can be inside of that. Now, this next one is a specific form of order and organization, but it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. Timely versus untimely. And like when we say timely, we usually mean like punctual, and I'm going to put punctual as encompassed by timely. But timely just means that you're very aware of the timing of things. Like to be timely is like if you are the type of person like me who, let's say that you're about to walk into a room and then you hear a huge burst of laughter come out of the room, and you might like wait a couple seconds for the like to like, you know, listen and make sure you understand what's happening in there before you go through that door, because you're concerned about the timeliness. You're worried about like what's happening in there, and am I about to interrupt, or am I about to walk into something I shouldn't? And like, you know, like in order to be a musician requires timeliness. You must be able to keep track of time, to keep time, you know, to be able to tell how much time is between the moments. Like, so timeliness to me is like awareness of time. How much do you care about timing? I would put myself pretty high on the timeliness scale, which is ironic because I'm not particularly orderly in other ways. That's why this is its own thing. It's not the same as accountable. It's not the same as available. You know, it's just simply how attuned are you to timing? How much do you care about things happening at a certain time, a very specific time, you know? So because I'm so timely, I am almost never like late. Like I'm more late now that I'm with Bird because we are on different timings. Where like I will have it in my head exactly everything I need to do before I am somewhere and what the timing of that will be without accounting for Bird. And he'll have the same thing in his head without accounting for me, and then our timing ends up fucked up. But like if it's just me, I am never late. I am always exactly on time because I'm super aware of when it's going to happen. To the point that I'm like putting other things, like I'm not good at inserting something else into the time I know something. Like if I know something's happening in 15 minutes, I'm not going to try to do like a quick 15-minute thing. I'm just going to not do anything for 15 minutes. Like I'm just going to wait for my time, you know? All right, I really got to fucking take a shit. So I'm going to rush through these last few quickly. Are you harmonious or disharmonious? Does this fall too much into orderly? Probably too similar to orderly. I'm gonna take that one out because to be harmonious is to observe a form of order. I have friendly versus unfriendly. I feel like that's self-explanatory, but I also feel like it's a superset, right? Like friendly kind of. Well, let's see. To be friendly doesn't mean you have to be easy. It doesn't mean you have to be shrewd. It kind of, well, it doesn't mean you have to be safe. But if you are friendly, well, no, they are different. I'm going to say friendly is another superset. Friendly is a set of traits that combined make a friendly person. And I do think a sagacious person would also be friendly. But I think friendly involves a combination of other traits. But basically it's somebody who wants to be a friend. Like whose goal, like, you know, you're not trying to be not friendly. And lastly, I have intuitive versus unintuitive because I hadn't written it before, I think, and we added it late game, right? And I don't think it's the same as something else. Well, I don't know. Let's see. Perceptive is kind of similar to intuitive, but intuitive is like it's similar to understanding, but it's not quite the same because intuitive means you get it in the first place. Understanding means you get it, you know, one way or another, like either eventually or immediately. Either way, it's just that you understand. Intuitive means you can figure things out without having to be told. So yeah, I don't think anything we've said so far is the same as that. All right, then, yeah, intuitive. That means that you are good at just figuring it out on pure intuition. Some people just like they don't know a lot, but they figure it out immediately, no matter what it is, you know. Okay, that's all I've got. That's all of my these are all of my vectors. All of my vectors of ways that you can consider how a person is. And since this was 3.5 hours of just me going through it, I'm sure there will be hundreds of hours more of discussion to be had about this. Let me know what words need to be added, what words need to be subtracted, what words need further explanation, what words you think are defined differently from how I defined them. And, you know, we will hash this into a graph over time. Thanks again for watching. Trixie forever.